Let's explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building, and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily. I'm joined by this guy over here. There we go. Yeah. Joined by Gordon, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. Brother, how you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm good. I think it's time to get a new webcam. Webcam keeps like cutting off, so I'm stuck using the laptop cam, which is goofy. So
Makes you look old. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it actually, I haven't used this thing ever really, so it's actually working fine. But you know, it is what it is. Whatever. We'll do it live. We'll do it live.
F it. We'll do it live. Time to upgrade the equipment, man. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today. It's a Tuesday, so we've got Ghost here to help us unpack all of the shenanigans and probably upset some people and other people root us on. And this is funny, man. This has been like one of the most interesting narrative psychological operations run on MAGA, and seeing how people are dealing with it. It's really interesting to watch this, man.
Yeah, it's our last week when we hopped on together, it was really just about trying to understand what's going on, right? It's trying to understand. It's not getting all emotional, getting all worked up over our personal feelings over what we think is happening, what appears to be happening. It's really just more trying to understand what is happening, and more importantly, why it's happening. I think the why in this situation is more important than the specific actuals. And yeah, I mean, now how things have changed in the past like 72 hours, right? I mean, things have really evolved in a way that makes a lot more sense now. I think to me, it makes a lot more sense to certain people who track these things in certain ways, and we're starting to see the pattern kind of emerge that I think we've seen with Venezuela and we've seen in other models. It's not the exact same. It's not the exact same development or a sequence of events, but man, there are a lot of people who the people who I think were at the tip of the spear and pushing for this war are now kind of like left out, exposed out in the open on the rug, right? And Trump has kind of like slowly inched himself off the rug. And it's a remarkable thing to watch these people kind of dance in the wind.
Yeah, it is truly fascinating. It's one of those situations where, like, if you don't say exactly what somebody wants to hear, the confirmation bias, they're like,
Yes.
oh, this person's dooming out hard. And it's like, no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Just telling you what's going on. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's really important that, you know, through this entire process, not just with this, but with everything, just moving forward, like critical thinking, skepticism, discernment, but most of all, like questioning things. Like, we should be questioning everything that's happening, specifically when it comes to our government. Like, there is never a situation that our government does something that we should not scrutinize it, question it, even especially when we agree with it. Especially like if we are in agreement, we should be like, is this actually happening the way that makes the most sense? If we ever get into a situation where we're going to stop questioning the government, then we're just lemmings, like living in a slave plantation.
Yep. All right, guys, let's jump into the news. Before we do so, we got to hit a sponsor. But before we do that, smash that thumbs up if you have not done so already. I do want to jump over real quick. We had a Badlands boost from Friday that I missed from Carrying the Fire 7. Sometimes while I'm driving, I'll zone out and remember and say, hey, what about the 2,500 food plants that burned down, Palestine, Ohio chemical spill, and the Baltimore Bridge? Or maybe Fauci. These were massive events, and then poof, they all just gone. Insane. Yep.
Yeah.
We tend to have the attention span of goldfish when you have a 24-hour news cycle, and it's not necessarily a slight against human beings. It's just we're not designed to process this much information, and something is the biggest thing until the next biggest thing comes along, and then all of a sudden you forgot about that last biggest thing, and it goes by the wayside, and people are just like, oh well, no big deal. Nobody cares about the Palestinians Palestine, Ohio, Palestine. I think it's Palestine, Ohio. Residents that are now like injected with microplastics and all sorts of other toxic chemicals. The bridge just mysteriously disappeared, and now they're not even rebuilding it. I've heard.
Is that the most recent development? I didn't hear that.
That's what the most recent thing I heard is that they're not going to be rebuilding it. I don't know, but again, just it's like ephemeral experiences.
That is bizarre because that's such an important bridge in terms of like the traffic. Traffic flow through Baltimore.
Look it up real quick while I talk about our first sponsor, the Francis Key Bridge, see if they're going to rebuild that. Hey, have you checked out Badlands Shop lately? You might be surprised by what you've been missing, from thoughtful gifts and unique finds to everyday household essentials and personal care items that you must have. There's truly something for everyone at the Badlands Shop, but here's what makes it a difference. Every single purchase that you make is so much more than just buying stuff. You're investing directly in the movement. You're empowering America First businesses, and you're lifting up fellow Badlanders and supporting the creators who are building this community along with us. Thank you for being a part of this. Your support means everything. Head on over to badlandsmedia.tv/shop or click shop on the main menu at badlandsmedia.tv and discover your new favorite brands. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/shop. All right. What'd you find out?
So I got a few stories here, but I mean, I'll just show the, let me just share my, like the search engine page. So it looks like I'm not seeing anything specifically, but again, like the search engines these days are so bad. I mean, the AIs are much better at finding information, but it's saying it looks like construction costs are soaring. 4 officers from that boat are still detained 2 years on. I don't see anything specifically. It says it's not going to be rebuilt, but a lot of these articles are 2 days. 2 days. Oh wait. Are 2 days old. It says today in history. This is posted 1 day ago. Today in history. So March 26th is when the bridge collapsed. So we're coming up on like 2 weeks away from the whatever anniversary of it.
So I did a search on the machine, and it says no, the rebuilding has not been canceled. Updates from January of 2026 confirm Governor Wes Moore and Sean Duffy met to discuss the project, reporting quote unquote significant progress and agreeing to accelerate reconstruction efforts. Costs have risen to $4.3 to $5.2 billion, and the timeline has shifted to late 2030.
Yeah, it seems kind of insane, but I mean, look, I mean, construction costs are up over the past several years, and that was before we really started seeing the inflation that we saw late in the Biden administration. That's mostly from the labor markets. So the price tag, I think, obviously should be scrutinized. We should be scrutinizing every government expenditure and auditing it. The timeline isn't totally unreasonable. I mean, any build is going to be several years, but when you're talking about a bridge and the engineering and the surveying and everything, I mean, it can be, and then you have like your permitting and inspections and all that. It's definitely, considering it was a collapse, I mean, there's definitely going to be, I think, probably extra security, extra considerations, extra engineering to prevent this from happening again. So the timeline isn't crazy to me, but nor is necessarily the price tag. I mean, not really knowing anything about, not really having like a basis of comparison for bridge construction in terms of cost, but everything should just be scrutinized at all times. Everything the government does.
Yep. All right, let's jump into our first story. So yesterday we talked about, from just the news, the FBI seizing election records in Maricopa County 2024. We've seen, I think it was Mark Fincham came out and said that they are going back to 2020 as well, which will be a very good thing. This is resulting from a grand jury subpoena. So this is not like, an administrative judge or, this is a grand jury subpoena. This is a group of peers that got together and said, yep, you guys should absolutely look into this. Well, we're getting some more information out of it now. Just the News put this out. Before the FBI subpoena, congressional observers flagged commingled ballots at Maricopa County Center. And this is tying into everything that Ash and I and so many others have been talking about for the last 5 freaking years. I go all the way back to 2020 on this. So does Ash. But her and I got together following the first symposium when we met, and we've been hammering this stuff out for since then, 4 years, 5 years. It says congressional staffers dispatched to monitor Maricopa County's vote counting process in 2024 reported, quote unquote, alarming concerns that completed mail-in ballots were stored in the same room as blanks and were sorted by a third-party printing company that had no government officials or partisan observers on site. Of course, we know that that's Runbeck. The FBI is currently receiving terabytes of data from that subpoena as part of its expanding probe into election irregularities across the country. A Republican staffer described in detail his visit to a third-party contractor, Runbeck Election Services, where they were sorting mail-in ballots for signature verification in preparation for counting. House staffers observed concerning storage practices and were informed that no state workers were present despite the handling of completed mail-in ballots. Congressional monitors visited the Runbeck facility, observed that mail-in ballot sorting was taking place in the same warehouse alongside shelves of unsecured blank ballots. The wrapping of some pallets of blank ballots appeared to be ripped open and ballots removed. Quote, it was alarming that the day after an election, ballots and envelopes would be printed. What? The day after an election, Runbeck is printing ballots and envelopes? Okay. They were left unattended with thousands of others similarly positioned. Stacked on the right were USPS sorting boxes, which were used to transport Maricopa mailed ballots from the main Maricopa facility to Runbeck. I asked if any of them were government employees or law enforcement. They said no. I asked if any government employees were on site. They said no, the staffer wrote. Now, we were told, this was part of the whole thing with with Runbeck, is, well, don't worry, Paul Penzone, the sheriff, the George Soros sheriff at the time, George Soros donated $1 million to his campaign in 2016. We were told that Penzone had deputies there monitoring this, and it was under constant 24-hour supervision. Turns out that was probably not true, according to this staffer.
Wait. This is for a sheriff? A sheriff's race? No.
This is for the 2024 election, but in the aftermath of 2020. Okay.
But you said in 2016, Soros gave this guy $1 million for his campaign.
Yep.
And for what office?
Sheriff.
Dude, I've worked on campaigns for prosecutors in Virginia where the entire budget for the entire campaign was $7,000.
Yep.
And that was for like a DA. That was for like a prosecutor, for Commonwealth's attorney. $7,000 he spent on the entire campaign. $1 million from one donor for a sheriff. That's why our government is such a disaster.
And he replaced Arpaio, who was, I
remember him. Yeah.
So I think Arpaio kind of got duped by Montgomery in the Obama birther thing. I think Arpaio is still correct. I think, Barack Obama's birth certificate that's on the whitehouse.gov website has a shit ton of discrepancies that absolutely should be investigated. Like, why is the font different throughout the whole birth certificate? Why is it in PDF file? If you put it in Photoshop, why is it in layers? Why do certain fields, can you remove certain fields? Like, people have done this in real time on Photoshop, downloaded it straight from the whitehouse.gov archives, put it into Photoshop, and then completely dismantled the entire birth certificate. I think Arpaio was onto something. And of course, Penzone was the guy that replaced him. And then we saw what happened with Maricopa County, Fox News calling it at, 30 minutes after the polls closed. I don't even remember. I think Florida was still counting votes when they called Arizona. And Florida was like 96% counted. Trump was up by like double digits. And the only part of Florida left to count was the Panhandle, because it's an hour behind. Florida's got 2 time zones. Up in the Panhandle, there's a small part that's an hour behind. And so they were delayed in counting. But they're still counting Florida, hoping that somehow a miracle happens and the blood red Panhandle somehow swings for Democrats. It made absolutely no sense, man. Absolutely no sense.
Yeah, this is, as we like untangle this mess and understand like how the elections are fake and gay, we also need to like take a step back and kind of analyze the entire democratic system itself. Because what, this phenomenon that I've noticed, that I've been tracking, is how people are so beholden to the machine. Like, doing the right thing is a very difficult thing for our politicians to do in the West, because they're beholden to the election system. They're beholden to the campaign cycle, the election cycle. It's like, oh, it's an election year, I can't do that because of politicking, right? Because I have to make certain people happy. I have to make certain groups happy. So I can't do the right thing. Maybe after the election, I can do the right thing, but I can't do the right thing now. So the question really begs, who are these people beholden to? I mean, obviously they're not beholden to the voters, the constituents. They're beholden, to the donors, but really more so than the donors, they're beholden to the machine, the apparatus that keeps the whole thing going. And so how do we dismantle that machine? Because that machine has corrupted and poisoned the entire concept of democracy and basically turned it into something that just doesn't work. And, like listening to Jonathan Drake's podcast, like Spooner and all that, there's some really valid points there about how democracy has actually become something that just simply doesn't work because it doesn't actually function the way that it's presented to us. It's not the people governing themselves. It's the machine governing the people with the appearance of self-governance.
Yep. Yeah. And if you don't listen to Jonathan Drake's No Trees and Podcasts on Sundays, you definitely should be listening to that. It's absolutely fantastic. Ash says in the chat, how come Ghost stole my spot on this episode of Why We Vote? Yep. I was going to wait till tomorrow, but I was like, this story's too big not to put out there, because it's not often that something in the election fraud movement comes to light that I don't know if maybe I knew this and I just didn't pay much attention to it, but I don't think I knew this. And let me read this part here. Quote, in contradiction of statements made to local news and journalists, Runbeck did not have bipartisan teams running these machines. There was no election workers present, no observers, and no election integrity, the staffer alleged in the memo. Now, this is the part that I didn't know. The Runbeck facility in Maricopa was also responsible for processing ballots for the election in neighboring Nevada. Runbeck was responsible for processing mail-in ballots for both Arizona and Nevada at the same time. In addition to Nevada, the Runbeck site reportedly stores ballots for several other Western states, including Colorado, California, and Utah. It is unclear, based on the report, whether Runbeck also sorts ballots on behalf of election officials in those states. So now I want to be careful in how I read this. So Arizona and Nevada are both stored at Runbeck and processed there, according to the article. But it says Colorado, California, and Utah as well. Now, I don't know if they're conflating prints their ballots and stores them until they request them and they mail them out. I don't know. And maybe Ash, because I know she knows Colorado better than anybody. So if Ash is in the chat, just let me know. Does Runbeck ship them directly to voters, mail them directly to voters in Colorado, or do they get sent out the same way that they did to Fulton County, right? 3 days after early in-person voting count began in Fulton County, Runbeck sends 770,000 ballots to Fulton County for $250,000 that they bought them for. So I'm going to wait and see what Ash says on that. But I do want to play this clip, just a rehash, because I share this clip all the time. And it's very worthwhile to listen to with this new development.
The Wednesday before the Friday that we quit voting, so 10 days before they quit tabulating, they thought they were done. And then more truckloads of ballots would come in. And I'm like, how can you not know how many ballots are still out there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Would you repeat that?
Yeah.
They thought they were done.
They thought they were done
and then
multiple times.
There was what?
Multiple times. The people that were running the rooms thought they were done or almost done, or we're going to be done Wednesday morning, then Thursday morning, then Friday morning. Then it went on the whole next week. And I'm like, I asked the question, I'm like, you don't know how many ballots are still left to come in? So I don't know. I don't know who does, again, process project management.
On that,
Zero.
On that point, ma'am, I'm tracking with you, but what day did the truck show up? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because
Every
what I heard
day.
the first time, what I thought I heard is a truckload of ballots showed
Yeah.
up. Okay, just a minute. I want to make sure that we capture this properly. So there were trucks that showed up on the 3rd, and then the 4th, and then the 5th. And how long did that go on? How many days?
Well, I wasn't there the whole last week, but I know
For as
they were
long as
still-
you can recall.
Yeah,
How
they were
many days?
My last day was the 10th, and they were still coming in. And they're
Trucks.
coming from a company called Runbeck that does the high-speed scanning and printing of duplications, and I think the military ballots. So now I'm getting out of my comfort level here talking about this. I don't know what they're doing, but those ballots were coming in from a high-speed scanning company called Runbeck that apparently you haven't heard of Runbeck?
No, I've heard of Runbeck,
Okay.
ma'am. But what I'm trying to figure out is whether they printed them or they scanned them, and if they scanned them off-site, to what purpose?
I can't tell you
Because wasn't that your job to scan them?
So we'll land that there. I'm going to put the what's up?
Oh, I was just saying, yes. Like I think that Ash is going to be far better equipped to flush this out than me.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about this ad nauseum on why we vote this Friday night. We were gonna do it this Friday. Believe it or not, we had somebody that's scheduled, and then it was my mom's birthday, so I had to travel to see her. And then we get this news over the weekend. Now, there may have been whispers that this was going to be happening here pretty soon, and so there might have been a pivot in coverage. But yeah, this Friday is going to be perfect to cover that. So.
Well, happy belated Mrs. or Mama CannCon. Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable to me that we are like 5 or 6 years removed from the event, and we still don't even have like a understanding of what actually happened, like minute by minute, like the sequence of events. It's maddening. Maggravator in the chat says this brings back flashbacks of of like horrible flashbacks. These were dark time, bad times. Yes. I agree that was just going back to the end of 2020, early 2021, horrible flashbacks of just stupidity and retardation all across the board. Shame on us.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to unpack on this. I mean, there's 2 competing lawsuits that would have provided at least some oversight to citizens that there was an unequal application of justice, in my opinion, in those 2 cases. So we'll get into those on Friday. But just remember, folks, and again, I put that link in the chat there. Just remember that, Arizona, Nevada, now we find out, California, potentially, Colorado, Utah, not only have they outsourced almost the entirety of your elections to private companies, they've outsourced the most fundamentally imperative portions of it, where ballots are most vulnerable, and that is the mail system, right? USPS, we're supposed to have some shred of confidence in how the federal government, the USPS, the organization as a union that endorsed a candidate in the 2020 election. Yeah, we're supposed to somehow believe that they're nonpartisan in this and that they're perfectly good actors. But, here we are now with a completely and totally opaque company that we have no transparency over, that handles the most important aspect of the ballot process, and that is the mailing to and from when it's completely vulnerable. So stay tuned. This Friday's Why We Vote is going to be very interesting, and I'm sure we'll get some more developments between now and then.
I mean, I like politics and elections. I think were bad enough before, but now that we've turned it into a for-profit industry, it's just taken it to the next level of horrifying corruption.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump into this story here from the Washington Post. And this article was free. I did not have to go to archive this one, which means they really want you to read this article. Judge disqualifies. Trio of lawyers tapped to lead New Jersey's federal prosecutor's office. This is Alina Habba's office that she was removed from. A judge on Monday disqualified 3 Justice Department officials from overseeing federal prosecutions in New Jersey by saying they were appointed as part of an illegal power grab by the Trump administration. Imagine an unelected district court level judge telling the president of the United States, who is tasked with appointing U.S. attorneys, that he's in a power grab because of who he's appointing. Shocking. U.S. District Judge Matthew Brand ruled last year that Trump's first choice for U.S. attorney, his former personal attorney, Alina Habba, was barred from the role because she had stayed too long without Senate confirmation. The key right there should be without Senate confirmation. The Senate waited too long to get their act together and do something. But anyways, on Monday, Braun swatted down Attorney General Pam Bondi's unusual decision to replace Habba indefinitely with 3 Justice Department officials who would share authority for the office. Brand also ruled that the Trump administration's maneuvers amounted to an erroneous assertion of presidential power. Imagine that, a judge telling the president that his appointment power is an erroneous assertion. Meanwhile, he's telling the president that he can't do that as a judge, district judge, unelected. Quote, it is plain that President Trump and his top aides have chafed at the limits on the power set forth by law and the Constitution. To avoid these roadblocks, this administration frequently purports to have discovered enormous grants of executive power hidden in the vagaries of silences of the code, Brand wrote. The U.S. law normally requires Senate confirmations for U.S. attorneys and only allows people to serve in the position without that confirmation for limited periods. Under Trump, however, the Justice Department has sought to leave unconfirmed prosecutors in their position for far longer, often through novel personnel maneuvers that courts have later ruled to be improper. Let's stop right there for a second because the judge is going to outline some absurdities here, but I think this law needs to be amended, and President Trump, going in over a year that he's been in office with appointees that have been waiting for that, majority of that year for a hearing to get appointed. I think we need to amend that law that you can't remove them if the Senate refuses to have a hearing on them. And not saying that they can't confirm or affirm or deny that position, but they at least have to go through the process. The law delegates them as the ones that have to confirm, right? The president's pick, but they're refusing to even have a hearing and a vote on whether or not to confirm them. That's a broken system.
Yeah, I think this is a constitutional crisis, in my opinion. I think that the system, the 3 branches of government just don't work anymore. The idea that the legislature and the judiciary can tell the executive who their personnel choices can be is insane to me. It's like, is the president of the United States the chief executive officer or not? If he's not the chief executive officer, then let's amend the Constitution and just make sure our language, like we're actually using accurate language to describe the office. But if he is the chief executive officer, which is how it is described in every document of creating this country, then why the hell can't he just put the people that he wants in place on his staff like that? If he can't do that, and he's not the chief executive, he's something else. So let's use the right language to describe this stuff. I know this is like semantics, but communists use semantics to frustrate and shut down progress and shut down operations. But this is insane. Like, this is just beyond anything that like we're going to get to 2028 and Trump's not even going to have like installed the people that he wanted in his administration.
Let's jump over to the ruling here. The judge's ruling, and he writes in this ruling, he says, one factual point must be noted. The government explicitly concedes that, quote, the Rube Goldberg style delegation mechanism employed, end quote, here is not necessary to keep the office running. At the time of oral argument, at least 3 undisputedly legal methods were immediately available to fill the United States Attorney's position and resolve this controversy. First and second, 2 paths under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, 5 U.S.C. 3345, subsection A2 and A3. Permit the president to designate an individual with specific qualifications to perform the United States Attorney's function and duties as long as time remains under 3346. And third, the judge of the District of New Jersey may still appoint a United States attorney to serve indefinitely. So you either have the 2 outlines, appointments that the president can make under 3346, or the judges in the district can name who the U.S. attorney is going to be, which is absurd to me. The latter is absurd to me. An appointment under any of these provisions would give the government the power to move prosecutions ahead and ratify past actions that have not yet been invalidated. Additionally, the president could at any time fill the office by nominating someone to be confirmed by the Senate, except when the Senate refuses to do it. The government acknowledges that these are viable methods. With all these options remaining, why does the fate of thousands of criminal prosecutions in this district potentially rest on the legitimacy of an unprecedented and Byzantine leadership structure? The government tells us the president doesn't like that he cannot simply appoint whomever he wants, notwithstanding the chaos that pervades criminal prosecutions in this district, and without regard to the possibility that scores of dangerous criminals could have their cases dismissed or convictions eventually reversed. Quote, the executive branch, at least right now, is not prepared to use the legal options. So if you jump over to the legal options, 5 U.S.C. 3345, if an officer of an executive agency whose appointment to office is required to be made by the president by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, dies, resigns, or is otherwise unable to perform the functions, then notwithstanding paragraph 1, the president and only the president may direct a person who serves in an office for which appointment is required to be made by the president by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to perform the functions and duties of the vacant office temporarily in an acting capacity, subject to the time limitations of 3346. And we'll get to 3346 in 1 second. Notwithstanding paragraph 1, the president and only the president may direct an officer or employee of such executive agency to perform the functions and duties of the vacant office temporarily in an acting capacity, subject to the limitations of 3346. Now, this is the part that's mind-blowing to me. And I think that this is similar to how they got Carrie Lake. We talked about this yesterday. They're trying to remove Carrie Lake from the U.S. AGM, the global media office. Subject to the time limitations of 3346, if during the 365-day period preceding the date of death, resignation, or beginning of inability to serve of the applicable office, the officer or employee served in a position in such agency for not less than 90 days. In other words, what they're saying is that if somebody resigns from an office in these executive branches, in order for you to replace them under this statute, you have to pick somebody that's been in that office for at least 90 days prior to that resignation. So in other words, when Donald Trump assumed office and all these people that were from the Biden administration were like, oh no, we're getting out of here, we're resigning. The only pool under this statute that President Trump is allowed to pull from would be the people that were already there. And as we know, fish rots from the head down, right? So these entire agencies are absolutely corrupt to the core. And the epitome of the deep state is the rank and file bureaucracy in most of these executive agencies. So I thought that was fascinating. And then just real quick on 3346, it says the person serving as an acting officer can serve for no longer than 210 days, beginning the date of the vacancy. Once a first or second nomination for the office is submitted to the Senate, from the date of such nomination for the period that the nomination is pending in the Senate. In other words, from the day that you're submitted to the Senate, you got 210 days to serve before the Senate, has to make a decision. Or no, excuse me. You have 210 days to serve, regardless of whether the Senate makes a decision. I'm sorry, I'm going really in depth and technical here, but the way that this appointment system is set up right now is completely and totally fucked.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and it begs the question, like, what is even the purpose of the president if why not just have the Senate do everything if this is the way that they're going to operate? And I would really ask, like, can we go back in history? Did Obama have these problems? Did Bush have these problems? Did Clinton have these problems? And they all operated like Obama had a Republican Congress, Bush had a Democrat Congress, Clinton had a Republican Congress, and they didn't have these problems. And that just goes to speak to the uniparty. I think everyone needs to understand this. Like, people still are caught up in the Republican versus Democrat nonsense. It's all bullshit. The Republicans could fix this really quickly, it seems, but they won't. They won't do what's that thing called? The
talking filibuster.
Yeah, where they get rid of the filibuster. Like they could fix this. Trump has told them to fix it. He's like, the Democrats are gonna get rid of it when they get back in power anyway. You might as well go ahead and do it now. They won't do it. And it begs the question, why? And I mean, we all know the answer. The answer is because they all work for the same people. They all are, two wings of the same bird. And I think we just need to kind of, like, as adults, confront that reality and stop, like, put down the pom-poms and stop being cheerleaders for a system that has enslaved us. A system that demands, when you wake up and you go to work on Monday, you're not working for your family, you're working for the government. Like the money you take home on Monday, 1/5 of your paycheck goes to the government. That's Monday through Friday. One of the days you go to work, you're not even taking that home. You're giving it to these people, and these people are obviously, they've abused that. They have not been good stewards of that money. They have not been good stewards of our government. They have not been good stewards of our society. Look at our cities. I mean, this is a joke, and we have to stop perpetuating this, and we have to just stop the wheel and be like, enough's enough. We're done. Like, we need to walk away from all this.
Bingo. You're spot on. No president has ever faced what President Trump is facing right now. And the point you made earlier was brilliant. Do we have a president, or do we have a president who can be stopped by judges, by the Senate, by, magistrate judges, by probably administrative court judges? Like, what do we really have? I mean, President Trump clearly has a mandate. We're going to get into some polling data here where President Trump is polling better than anybody else out there. And this is an NBC poll that we're going to go through. But yeah, you're spot on with that. What is the authority of the president, and why all of a sudden now? Why all of a sudden now is there some massive, pushback against anything that he's trying to do? Because like you said, this has been done historically without problem. In fact, most of the time, these are done with, big batches where, they'll put 100 names together and say, does anybody object to any of these? No? Okay, good. You're done. The top tier, cabinet level and maybe one, subordinate below tend to get their individualized hearings. But the absurdity that we're seeing right now from the Senate, the feckless, illegitimate body, is insane. And that brings me to this point right here from ABC. Thune says no to filibuster changes, even after Trump's threat about the Save America Act. Majority Leader Thune reiterated that there would not be changes to Senate rules in order to pass the election reform bill that President Trump has demanded be sent to his desk. Yeah, that's not going to happen, Thune said. Quote, the president clearly is very interested in getting the Save America bill up and voted on, although he wants a modified version of it. And so we'll do our best to do that, said Thune. But the only thing I've said all along is, and I've told him and others, that I can't guarantee an outcome. I can't guarantee a result. If the result is only achieved by nuking the legislative filibuster, we don't have the votes to do that. And so that's not a realistic option. Of course, President Trump said he will not sign any other bills until this is passed. And then it goes on to note that the talking filibuster would be a change to the Senate operating procedure that could see lawmakers making tireless speeches on endless numbers of amendments on the floor. Thune warned that a, quote, talking filibuster, like the one being floated, could quickly become a, quote unquote, months-long process that eats up valuable Senate floor time with no guaranteed outcome. Quote, our time in the Senate is a finite resource, and it's something that we need to use wisely, and we'll get as much done as we can, Thune said. It would be an infinitely more finite if election reform actually, qualitative election reform actually was passed. I think, I differ with some of my other colleagues here that I think the SAVE Act is a starting point. It is a fundamental starting point in getting that election reform across. And Thune knows very fucking well that him, Cornyn, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, a lot of these scumbags would not make it through primaries if they had legitimate elections. And I'm not saying the SAVE Act's going to completely clean that up, but it is a massive step in the right direction. And the fact that something is polling at 88, 89%, and you're not seeing them do a damn thing about it is the biggest sign pointing right down at the DC swamp saying this is a fucking uniparty. They don't give a shit about you. They're going to self-preserve themselves to the fullest extent possible and make up a wild run of bullshit in order to do so.
Yeah, well said. Our time in the Senate is precious, he says. That's because they give themselves like ridiculous amounts of vacation time. They don't really spend that much time actually working. And then, of course, they have to go back home to campaign. So like we're getting into election season now. So they're going to start going home and campaigning, and kind of speaks to my earlier statement about the machine and how democracy has kind of been weaponized against us in the worst way imaginable, where the system doesn't work for us at all because the system just works for itself. It's just like a self-perpetuating system of nonsense and corruption. Can anybody name like anything that the Congress has done in the past year? Like, what have they accomplished? Like, just one thing. Just tell me one thing that of substance that the Congress has accomplished that has actually like improved the quality of our society, of our life, of anything. I mean, just one thing.
About the only thing I could think of, Ghost, in all honesty, would maybe be the Lake and Riley Act. Maybe. And that's so freaking common sense.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, like,
we've got continuing resolutions out the wazoo.
To keep the money flowing, to keep the money coming out of our bank accounts, so that they can keep stealing our money, siphoning it off, laundering it, embezzling it, and then sending it to their friends, so it ends up in a Credit Suisse account in Switzerland. Is that? Do I have that right? Okay.
Yep, you've got that right.
And then they're demanding that we come out and we shill for them for this upcoming election, because if we don't vote Republican, if we don't cast enough votes for that Republican Party, who knows what could happen? I mean, what has the Republican Party done to actually help President Trump codify anything that he has accomplished as the executive in the past year? Have they codified the tariffs? Have they codified the Doge cuts? Have they codified the firings from the bureaucracy, the rank and file? Have they done a damn thing to reinforce and codify anything that President Trump has done to save this country? The answer is no. So why do we support these people again? I'm just that's an earnest, serious question. I know there's a few of them that have rhetoric and language that we track with, but I'm just saying, as like a party, as a system, like, why do we even give these people the time of day? Like, why do we even give them our attention?
If you go, you're talking about what they've done codifying things. That was one of the highlights for me personally of his speech, his State of the Union speech, was when he said the most favored nation status, wildly popular. Congress needs to codify it. But don't worry, if you don't codify it, nobody's going to turn around and tell the people that we're going to raise your drug prices 500, 600, 700%. You'll never be able to do that. They will, but they'll do it very slowly. They'll do it well, we got to raise it 40% here, and then in a couple of years we got to raise it. It's going to go up. You're not going to see it. It's like it's going to be literal gaslighting, right?
They will gas. Here's how they'll do it. They'll present it as a free markets thing. They'll be like, well, we don't want to be communist because a communist system would regulate and tell companies how they can price their products. So we're going to let the free market decide. We're going to let the marketplace decide what the pricing is. And of course, in the highly regulated communist system that we have, which is what our pharmaceutical industry looks like. It is a highly regulated system where the government picks winners and losers through the FDA. Like the free market, if you want to call it that, it's a silly term to use to describe it, is going to determine that you're going to pay 100 times what somebody in Europe is going to pay for the exact same medicine.
Somebody in the chat said, tax revolt. And I was listening to a clip that I saw from G the other day. It popped up on my Facebook, actually. And I don't do much on Facebook, but Badlands, these clips will pop up. And G was saying, the tax revolt, we consent to being governed by taxes and voting. And I don't agree quite as much on the voting. I mean, I understand that technically he's right, but the taxes for sure is our consent that we go along with what we're doing, with what they're doing, excuse me. Now, when you look at, again, an issue that has an 89% approval rating in every poll that's out there is between 80 and 89%. That is a plurality, like that is a majority across the board, a super majority, beyond any majority you'll ever see in Congress, unless we clean up our elections. If we cannot get representation, if we cannot get the Senate to do what we are telling them to do based on polling numbers like that, and it's something that fundamentally changes the country, okay? We're not talking if it was 89% to, send money to, Cuban dance program, some bullshit like that, I'd be like, okay, this is stupid. But the Americans have identified a problem in this country. Our elections are wildly corrupt from the top down. They're wildly corrupt. And we are trying desperately to fix it. But we are going to the people that are beneficiaries of it in order to get that remedy. And when they're ignoring us like they are right now, fuck you. You don't, I am checking out of that system.
Yeah, you're asking organized criminals to follow the law and enforce the law. Like that's basically what you're doing. It's insanity. And I would completely agree with you. I think G Money is right about a number of things. Yeah. The energy, like that's the big thing he pushes, is energy. Like he equates money with energy, right? Like money is a representation of your energy, the effort you put into your job. You get compensated for that. Right. And that monetary value that you get is a representation of the energy that you put in. So it's not just the taxation, it's also the attention and the energy that you dedicate to these people. And so when we give all of our attention to the things that the shiny objects that they dangle in front of our faces, instead of dedicating our energy to other more pertinent, pressing matters, that is another form of taxing us. That's another form of distracting us and keeping us enslaved in their system. And so I'm not suggesting that we all black pill and like stop caring about this stuff. I'm suggesting that we redirect and reallocate our energy to places that actually matter and not like just respond to the news cycle as dictated by our corporate media and our politicians. Because to your point at the very beginning of the show, what happened to all these major like events that happened, the collapse of the bridge of Palestine, Ohio? Why is our attention no longer on those? Because these people have told us that we now need to redirect our attention to more pressing matters like keeping the government funded.
All right, let's move on and get into this story. Speaking of the feckless, useless Senate that doesn't have time to pass something with 89% approval of the American people. This is something I could get behind, but it's moving through the Supreme Court right now. Why do we need to take time out for this? Let's get the SAVE Act passed. U.S. Senate to examine birthright citizenship restrictions. The U.S. Senate will examine potential birthright restrictions for children of illegal aliens and tourists. The debate taking place today. The 14th Amendment ensures the protection of U.S. citizenship, but it was originally created to allow African American citizenship upon birth following slavery. You kind of forget that point. That's a very important point right there. Interpretation of the amendment, specifically the subject line, jurisdiction thereof portion of the 14th Amendment, is being analyzed to determine if children of tourists and illegal aliens do not qualify for citizenship when born in the U.S. The Center for Immigration Studies estimated 225 to 250,000 babies of illegal immigrants and 70,000 babies of tourists were born in the United States soil in 2023 and granted immediate citizenship. Further details regarding the hearing, including witness names, has not yet been disclosed. So you guys can't do the talking filibuster, but you can go have a worthless meeting where you guys can get your 5-minute sound bites to put out there on your socials just ahead of the Supreme Court, litigating this or hearing litigation on this, so that when the ruling does come down, you can either say, look, I was so far out in front of what SCOTUS said, I was right all along. Or you can say, the Supreme Court got this wrong, and I told you guys about this in a hearing. It's so fucking stupid, man. All right. I'm going to goose fraba today, man. I had some extra caffeinated coffee.
It's rage porn, man. It's like, it's rage.
That's all it is.
Yeah, it's rage porn. And again, it's like giving these people your attention, giving them your support, giving them, reinforcing that kind of behavior is what perpetuates it. And really what we should be doing as a society is we should be conditioning ourselves to ridicule them. I mean, if these people were being ridiculed nonstop daily for this behavior, they would stop. But they're getting their social media likes, they're getting their, positive reinforcement because they're owning the libs or whatever the hell is happening. And that's why it perpetuates. It's like we should be shaming them for being such moral degenerates, but instead we hit the little like button and we retweet their stupid little sound bites.
I know. And that's all this will be. So meanwhile, we got a hearing on birthright citizenship. Maybe, I don't know. Nobody's been named yet, but I'll watch it. And then you guys don't need to watch it, and nobody else should watch it. Maybe I'm not even going to watch it. Just screw it all. No, I'll watch it. But I mean, this is the whole point, is like, you're going to go and do one of these stupid little hearings. And I don't know, man. I'm pissed. All right, let's go ahead and jump into a sponsor.
There's a reason that I focus on geopolitics, brother.
I know.
It's because this stuff is just so infuriating and also like a waste of time. A lot of it, like nothing comes of this stuff. It's just we spin our wheels and then nothing happens, and then we're on a new election cycle.
Try doing it when you're like all the way in on elections and you understand. Like, I know the system, and this is a totally fake system right now, but it on a totally different level, right? And so when you see this, Sammy the Squirrel says, I'm getting emotional. It's not really emotional. I guess anger is an emotion. It's more, it's anger. But, just like they get their clips when they do these stupid little hearings, you have to motivate people. Like, people need to understand that we're not going to be robots and sit here and be like, oh, today the Senate is having a hearing on birthright citizenship while they should be passing the 89% approval rate bill of the Save America Act. President Trump is standing behind. No, fuck that. I'm done with that shit.
Yeah. Well, human emotion, I mean, we're human, you're right. And so we're going to have emotions. We're going to have emotional responses to things that we witness and see. And it's perfectly fine and human to have those responses. It's just a question of what do you do with that energy? If all you do with that energy is just scream into the abyss, then yeah, that's a total waste of time. But if you take that energy and that passion and you redirect it into a laser focus into something constructive and do something positive with it, even if that's just understanding the problem, analyzing the problem, and then breaking it down so others can comprehend it the way that you do, can become a building block to something towards solving the problem, right? So that's what we should be taking with this emotion, is we should be channeling the emotion into a passion toward fixing the problem rather than just reacting to what these idiots, these clowns put on our screens.
Yep. All right, let's jump into a sponsor and real quick here. Let me get that pulled up and there we go. Guys, here's a little inside scoop that many creators are talking about behind the scenes. It's actually one of the reasons that we use Rumble. They made a way to super chat creators so we get paid immediately and without any fees. YouTube and Twitch take up to 50% fees when you tip creators. This method takes none. That's right. The platform takes 0 fees. We get to keep nearly 100% of whatever you send us. You can send super chats with Bitcoin, Tether, US dollars, or even Tether Gold stable coins. The tip will show up directly on the Rumble chat, and we always will do our best to read them. All you need to do is download the Rumble wallet on the App Store and send the tips to your favorite creators. You can go to wallet.rumble.com, or you can download the app directly from the App Store. Seriously, what an amazing way to get rid of the middleman and help the creator economy. Shout out to Rumble for making this disruptive technology. And let's also talk about our friends over at Mushroom Vibe.
Hey there, Earthlings. I'm here on the streets of New York to tell you about something that's literally out of this world. You know, traveling between dimensions really takes it out of you, but I've found the perfect solution. My Shroom Vibe can now be your Shroom Vibe. Elevate your frequency. Get microdose capsules, gummies, and chocolate bars at myshroomvibe.com. Use code BADLANDS for 10% off your order. Trust me, galaxy hopping demands balance, and ours comes from Mother Nature. Organic, not synthetic. It's the real deal. Psy Lee, if you know what I mean. Check it out. Your frequency will thank you. Visit myshroomvibe.com. Organic goodness, not synthetic. Use code BADLANDS.
All right. So thank you to our sponsors there. Let's jump into this story here from the New York Post. Gavin Newsom's wife pushed weird gender films into California classrooms while paying herself a fortune. Jennifer Siebel Newsom leaned on her powerful husband and his education board to push preachy flicks about toxic masculinity into classrooms, casting her husband as an enlightened democratic savior, all while raking in up to $300,000 annually through the nonprofit, the Representation Project, and for-profit outfit Girls Club Entertainment. Quote, I turned the lens on boys and men and looked at the boy crisis in America and how we were failing our boys and men with this sort of rigid notion of toxic masculinity, Siebel Newsom said about one of her films in an interview. Toxic masculinity. You know what happens to beta soy boy guys? They end up dying as, well, not all
as women, right?
As women or without women. So they can't get the women, so they become the women. And yeah, that's basically what happens to them, man. Like, we need to make toxic masculinity great again in this country. We need to make alpha males great again. Competitive, and embrace your testosterone. Learn to channel that for good things, and you will learn that toxic masculinity is actually nothing more than fierce loyalty and devotion to your female counterpart, your wife, your girlfriend, your mother. All right, and I'm talking broadly here. And the ability for a toxic masculinity, toxic male to do whatever is necessary to protect his family. Like, this is what they want to get away from. They want to get away from, just turn to the state. You know, if somebody threatens your wife, you just take it like a beta bitch and call the police and then deal with it then after whatever has happened has happened. Toxic masculinity is the downfall of of our society, the culture that we have embraced throughout our 250 years.
Yeah. And, you know, I wrote about this in the news brief this morning, and this is something that I like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 2015, I was like saying this to my friends. I was laughing when this all started up because I was like, there's no way that people are actually going to like go for this crap. Like, we're going to tolerate this kind of a rhetoric, but we did. And I think a lot of it was just apathy. A lot of it was just people just distracted with their lives and just kind of allowing this to fester and metastasize. Now we are finally now we're finally directing our energy and our attention on it so we can, I think, push it out. But to your point, the world has always been dangerous. The world will always be dangerous. That's just the way that the human world is. Like we live in a dangerous world. Okay. Whether you're talking about geopolitically or you're talking about, walking down the street in an urban city, anything can happen at any time. Right. Does that prevent you? Does that fear prevent you from going out and living your life? No, because alpha male, confident masculine men go about their life, and not just men, but just confident people go about their lives. Back in the Old West, you know how the peace was established and maintained? Everybody had a gun. Everybody had a gun on their hip, and if you fucked around, you got shot. That's the way it worked. If you messed around, somebody pulled out their six shooter and shot you right in the face, and you're done. Okay, that's how order was established in the Old West. That is toxic masculinity, a hyper masculine environment, right? Where violence basically maintained order. In the opposite system where you have a bunch of weaklings and beta males running the country, running the world, they demand safe spaces. They demand padded rooms. They demand everything to be bubble wrapped and secure. They demand that we run around and we topple governments because that government might get a weapon one day that could threaten us, right? Not even considering human nature and how incentives work and is that government actually going to use that weapon against us? Because then that government is going to suffer their own consequences if they do so, right? Failing to understand how human nature dynamics even are in play, demanding security and safety and constant safety. That is what weaklings do. Confident people just go out and live their life, understanding that danger's around every corner, but we're going to deal with that danger when it confronts us because we're not full of fear. We're not cowards, but unfortunately we are absolutely ruled by cowards.
Was it you were talking about an armed society as a polite society, which I agree with 1000%. Wasn't it Kennesaw, Georgia that passed a law that every home has to have a firearm, and then crime just plummeted?
Yeah, that could be true. I mean, Switzerland's always had that. I think everybody's required to own a weapon.
A rifle.
Yeah. Switzerland's a very stable society. It's a very polite place. Everyone's required to own a weapon, right? It's there's something to be said about that. An armed society is absolutely a polite society because that if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, your day might go south.
Yeah. So reading on in this story here, even the liberal New York Times called the latter film disingenuous because it's directed by the spouse of a top Democrat, but the relationship is never disclosed to unwitting viewers. In 2020, the Department of Education worked with partners, including Newsom's state-sponsored Office of the First Partner, not the First Lady, but the First Partner, to push, quote, social emotional learning, end quote, in low-performing California schools, again recommending her films for classrooms. Quote, we've seen literacy rates at the lowest we've had ever in the state. We've seen math rates at the lowest we've ever had in the state, said Assemblymember David Tangipa. This is a very clear attempt to indoctrinate the next generation of Californians. It's a lot easier to control an uneducated group. For the first time in history, this generation is significantly lower educated than our parents and our grandparents. Look at this little map here that they put out there. Representation projects curricula include cringy activities such as, quote unquote, a privilege walk, sorting students by race, gender, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. Other teaching manuals quiz middle schoolers on terms like pansexuality using a diagram labeled the genderbread person. The Representation Project has earned more than $3 million in screening and film sales, paying Siebel Newsom a $150,000 salary plus additional reimbursements worth up to $150,000 annually per IRS filings. So she basically used her husband's office as the lieutenant governor originally and eventually the governor to put him in his films without the disclaimer that he's related to the director, married to the director. And she's making money off of this by forcing schools, not forcing, but pushing this into schools through California's governor's office, putting them into school curriculum and making money, profiting off of that. And to the tune of $3.7 million, I think, where she's paying herself $300,000 a year, in addition to any other salaries. I don't know if you get salary as the office of the first lady or first partner, excuse me. But yeah, Gavin Newsom's going to have a fucking rough, excuse me, I probably shouldn't have sworn right there, but he's going to have a really rough go if he runs for president in 2028.
These people are all perverts, man. Like they're just like groomers who obviously abuse children psychologically and probably otherwise. And again, we tolerate it because as a society, we've just have grown very weak. We've separated ourselves from God and we worship secular materialistic things rather than the one truth in the world, which is God. And because of that, we're weaklings and we are totally incapable of stopping Satan from ruling over us.
Amen, brother. Yeah. All right. And then we just real quick, we'll skim through this poll. Speaking of Newsom, the Democratic Party has a lower net favorability rating than ICE. Just think about that. The next time they're out there saying abolish ICE, the Democratic Party has a lower favorability rating than ICE. In fact, the NBC News survey found that 30% of respondents had a quote unquote very positive or somewhat positive view of the Democrats. Just 30%. 52% had a very negative or somewhat negative view of the Democrats for an overall net of negative 22. By contrast, Trump scored a negative 12 favorability rating, and that's with the media blasting him every single day. Despite heavy messaging by Democrats against ICE in recent months, the NBA survey found that 38% had a positive view of the agency compared with 56% negative view. Now, this is the last thing I'll land on here. The only the nation of Iran drew a lower net rating than the Democrats in the 14 name-tested people and entities that they ran the poll for. Democrats were at the bottom of the list. The only thing lower was the country of Iran. And not by much. I think Iran was let's see. Iran was pretty bad. Neutral was 28%, 8% favorable. Yeah, so gotta love it.
So the options are it's like Iran on one side or the people who cut off the genitals of children and tell boys that they're girls. It's like I'm not really sure like who's actually worse in that situation, because it seems like we probably would have an easier time negotiating with Iran than with the people who tell little boys that they can be girls if they cut off their genitals.
It's a fair point, man. Before we move on, I'm going to hand it over to Ghost here in just a second. I do have a couple clips that I want to play, but before we do that, guys, GART ticket holders, the first exclusive live stream is here. It's going to be this Thursday, March 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern. The link, you guys will get the link sent out at 1 p.m. Eastern by 1 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. You can grab your virtual tickets for GART 11 in Nashville, Tennessee, a special early bird price of until March 15th, which I think is Saturday. After that, the regular price of $40 will kick in. You can visit badlandsmedia.tv/events to snag the lowest price for virtual tickets. And again, you will get access to the exclusive GART stream on Thursday, March 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Those are always a lot of fun. The exclusive live streams. You never know who's going to jump in. Usually it's 6-7 people and we just have a great old time. So, Gordon, I got a couple clips I want to play here. On President Trump, he had a press conference yesterday down in Doral, and I got two clips. This is a short one here.
Do you have to take him out? Does he have a target on his back?
You mean the new supreme leader? You mean the son?
How can there be in Iran?
Well, I don't want to say that, but I was disappointed because we think it's going to lead to just more of the same problem for the country. So I was disappointed to see their choice.
Okay, so that was his comments yesterday on Motaba Khamenei, I believe is his name.
Khamenei, yeah, the son, yeah.
Yeah, so this is another clip. So I have 3 in a row, and I can't remember which one's which, so I'm just going to play this, and we'll comment right after.
Rate that nobody thought was possible. We're knocking them out. We know where they all are. We're knocking them out very quickly.
Oh, this is interesting.
We're ahead of our initial timeline by a lot. I would say that we probably would not have thought after a month we'd be here. in addition to the fact that we've taken out the leadership twice and maybe 3 times.
What do you think that means? We've taken out the leadership twice and maybe 3. Does that mean he killed Arafi when they named Arafi as the Ayatollah?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to kind of. I mean, honestly, I think. Well, let's finish playing the clip, and then I'll give you my assessment.
And we, as you know, we want to be involved. We don't want another president that maybe wouldn't be willing to do what I'm willing to do for the good of the world, for the good of our nation, to be stuck with a situation in 5 years or 10 years from now. So we think they should put a president in, or the head of the country in, that's going to be able to do something peacefully for a change. They've been doing this for 47 years, killing people for 47 years.
All right. Go ahead, Ghost.
Do you have the clip, though, of him saying that, this thing might be completely over? Like, we might actually be done with the...
I don't. If you want to play that one.
I don't... I'd have to find if you want to see if you can find it while I'll give you my assessment on this. But so let's just like back up, and because I'm no Iran apologist. Like I don't view Iran as some like great government system, political system, or anything like that. But let's just back up and look and apply basic logic to our situation. Number one, do we believe that our government is controlled by an apparatus other than the American people, like the thing that we call the deep state? Yes, right. We don't really know exactly what it is, but we understand that it's not us. Is this apparatus, the deep state, running illegal psychological warfare operations against the American people? Yes. Do we believe that President Trump is running his own counter operations against these people, his own psychological warfare operations against these people? Probably. Would said psychological warfare operations require deception? Probably. So again, I think you take that basic logic, that basic line of linear thinking, and you just apply it to pretty much everything that is happening. But where I think geopolitics is different and differs from the domestic stuff is I think the domestic stuff is so heavily controlled and so heavily corrupted and people are so stuck in their like ways of thinking and their little like intellectual ghettos, that it's hard to break them out of that. The geopolitics, I think, is interesting because it's where cultures meet. It's, as General Quassa said, it's the playground where all the kids convene. And there's like a natural order, just like on a playground with children, there's a natural order that evolves when these kids meet and interact with one another. And so studying those dynamics and studying how, like I've said before, my analysis really comes more from how these kids interact with one another more so, and what they say more so than the actual events that are happening, because who knows if the reported events that are happening are actually happening or not. Like I don't waste a lot of time trying to determine that. So when it comes to this situation, when President Trump comes out and says, I think this actually might be over. I think we actually might be done with the Iran war. And then we see the price of oil crash from $100 a barrel to like $80 a barrel, which is what happened yesterday in the course of like 20 minutes. Those are interesting developments to me. I think those are really interesting developments. Now, let's get to Iran. Do you have a clip here?
I think this might be it.
Okay.
No Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar. They have no telecommunications. And they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. But the big risk on that war has been over for 3 days. We wiped them out in the first 2 days. When you think about it, it's incredible. We wiped out a big Navy, very powerful Navy. These were ships. These were serious ships. These were ships that you buy when you want to win battles. They're all on the bottom floor. The sailors are all running off the ships. They refuse to get on the ships. The Air Force is gone. Everything's gone. The missiles are down to a trickle. The drones are down to probably 25%, and they'll soon be down to nothing. We'll have where they manufactured the drones are under fire as we speak. They're being hit. So the rest is going to be determination as to my attitude, along with the people in the Trump administration, what we want to do.
All right, so maybe not the complete success one, but close.
Yeah, but the point is he said, and this has been, I mean, I went to go pick up my kids yesterday from my mom's house, and she had Fox News on, and I saw that I think her name's Kennedy, like on the Gutfeld show, was like having a apoplectic seizure over the fact that she was like, how could Trump leave these religious zealots in power and say that we're going to pull out and we're going to stop the war? Like, she was so upset that the war was going to end, and that to whatever extent the war has actually been happening, and maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I'm not here to say one way or the other, but what I love President Trump for, and the deepest gratitude to him, two things. One, I think he's totally leveled the playing field in terms of like analysis of this stuff, because it no longer matters how many super secret sources you have inside the government, because those people are feeding you bullshit. The people who are out there saying, well, my sources in the State Department, my sources at the Pentagon, they're wrong every single day. So if they, to whatever extent they actually are getting fed intel from these sources, their sources are wrong, because their sources have no idea what's going on, because every single day Trump is kind of changing the narrative every time he gets up and speaks, which is brilliant. It's brilliant narrative warfare that he's doing. Nobody else can seize the narrative and kind of wrap it in their own story the way they have in the past, because Trump keeps changing the story every single time and kind of shifting around. And that makes the analysis very, very difficult for the people who claim to be authoritative sources. So therefore, you kind of have to take a step back and like just analyze this more from like a human nature, more macro 40,000 foot view, which is what I try to do. I try to look at this from the macro as opposed to getting into the micro of like specific events to whatever extent they're actually happening. So now Trump is telling us that we've decapitated this snake like multiple times. We've taken out the leadership multiple times. I've said before, and I still kind of believe it, I think the Ayatollah has probably been dead for a long time. I think he probably died of natural causes a year ago, maybe longer ago. I could be wrong about that. I think this has been a convenient moment to say that he was martyred, that he, they ended up appointing a successor, his son. One thing that has been absolutely asserted by the people who are the supporters of this war, Lindsey Graham and his friends, is that there is absolutely no support has formed for like overthrowing the government in Iran. There's no demonstrations in the street. Nobody has come out and said, let's move on these institutions and do the overthrow. And I think a big part of that is because the intelligence network that was established by Mossad and the CIA was taken out back in early January. I think that Trump and Putin helped do that. I think that was all part of an op. And now that the color revolution agents are no longer on the ground, this isn't happening. Like, the color revolution isn't going to happen. And so now what Lindsey Graham is saying is, because of this, and we have some clips to watch that are absolutely insane. He's saying that we now need to do boots on the ground. Like, because the Iranian people will not overthrow the government themselves, we, the American people, need to go in and overthrow the government for them, because we know better than they do how they should be governed. Now, again, if you take a step, this is the second thing that I'm very grateful to President Trump. So grateful, because he has exposed all the traitors in our government. There's no denying now that these people are completely compromised and work for something other than obviously the constituency of the American people. Because if you take a step back and just objectively look at what I just said, and you can find these clips all over the place, and I'll be playing a lot of them on my show this afternoon. But the idea that one society, one government would impose itself on another society, another government, and tell that society how it should govern itself, how it should run its affairs, how it should do anything, that is tyranny. That is everything that we as Americans are supposed to oppose. That is everything that we as God-loving Christians are supposed to oppose. It's just morally degenerate to think that that is actually the way the world should function. And yet we have our leaders, Lindsey Graham and his friends, saying that that's exactly how America should function and should continue to function. That is called the neocon worldview. And again, if you trace the roots of this back to its origin point, its origin point is Leon Trotsky of the Bolshevik Revolution. He's the father of the modern Republican Party. And the guy who was responsible for taking the ideology and imposing it on the Republican Party in 1971, his name was Irving Kristol. His son, Bill Kristol, became one of the most important Republicans of the 1990s. So again, we have to understand that there are traitors in our government who I think Trump is exposing through these psychological warfare operations that he's running. Everybody wants to make this about Iran and like the threat that Iran may or may not pose. But I actually think this is about ourselves. This is about the enemy within our camp and exposing them for the warmongering neocons that they actually are. Because if you go and you look at what the rhetoric is right now, the rhetoric from Laura Loomer is that Turkey is next. Like Turkey is the new Iran. We need to go start a war with Turkey, which is not going to happen.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. That's the largest military in the Middle East, the second largest military in NATO. Other people are saying the next war is going to be with China. We need to go start a war with China. Okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck with that one. And then Lindsey Graham is saying the next war is going to be with Cuba. Like, we need to go start a war with Cuba. So it's like, it doesn't matter who the enemy is for these people. As long as there is a constant war that is driving the engine of revolution, that, again, I'm using language directly quoting from Leon Trotsky. And the reason Stalin kicked him out of the Soviet Russia is because he told Stalin, the only way this communist revolution continues is if we start a revolution everywhere and we overthrow every government and install a communist government. And Stalin said, that's stupid. We need to focus on building Russia up. Get out. This is the 1920s. So, again, like, we're being led by Bolsheviks. We're being led by communists. We're being led by Leon Trotskyites. In the Republican Party. Trump is exposing these people. We should be paying attention and being grateful to Trump for exposing these people. Now, when it comes to Iran, my understanding of the situation is they announced back in August that they were implementing devolution. They're implementing a continuity of government situation where they were devolving the powers, the political powers of the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah was completely removed from the chain of command. So the Ayatollah is just a figurehead now, not unlike King Charles in Britain, where the IRGC was completely restructured. The security and intelligence hierarchy, which they said was infiltrated by Mossad, had to be basically completely remade from scratch because they couldn't trust the people that were in place. I think Soleimani was one of these people. And then the governors, there's 31 provinces that make up Iran. Each of these governors was given the political power of the Ayatollah to negotiate trade deals with foreign governments, to use foreign currency, and to even use bartering system like services and goods to exchange should their currency hyperinflate. This is back in August. This was all implemented. And then, of course, we saw the currency hyperinflate in December and January, and that's probably been utilized by these governors. The other thing that they did is that they devolved the power, the military command, the C2, the command and control structure of the military, to the lowest level missile commanders. And who knows how many of these commanders exist, but even the most ardent Zionists, like pro-Israel Zionists, will tell you that the speculation is that there are tens of thousands of these missiles that they've been making for decades. And these commanders have the authority. They don't have to ask permission. They can just pick a target and fire a missile. That's how it works now. And so you can decapitate the Iranian military as many times as you want. You can kill every person in leadership. And they say the Ayatollah was taken out with the top 40 IRGC commanders. That's what they said happened like day one. Iran clearly learned a lesson from Hezbollah because they saw what happened to Hezbollah. Hezbollah had all of its leadership destroyed multiple times over during, the war a few years ago. So they were prepared for this. They were totally prepared for this to happen. And basically they're set up to continue to lose leaders indefinitely. And these low-level commanders will continue to have the authority to just keep firing missiles all day. And there are no signs that this is slowing down. There's no signs. In fact, what they came out and they announced yesterday is that they're now going to start using their more modern and sophisticated missiles. And they're not going to use anything less than a 1-ton warhead on the missiles that they're going to fire into Israel now. And so everything they've been firing up to this point are like the old tech. Now they're going to start using the new tech. And again, the situation that I see evolving on again, not really knowing what's happening on the ground, but just kind of going off a narrative, is that Trump has given the neocons and the Zionists the war that they've always asked for. It's like the little brother who has the big brother that everyone's afraid of. And the little brother goes around and picks fights on the playground and talks shit to everybody. And nobody's going to mess with them because they don't want to deal with the big brother. And suddenly the big brother is like stepping aside and is like, you know what? It's time for little brother to learn his lesson. The little brother needs to learn his lesson because he's turned into a little jackass and he won't stop picking fights with everybody. And sometimes getting punched in the face is the only way for somebody to learn their place in the world, right? And I kind of think that's what's happening right now is that we're seeing little brother take his lumps because otherwise his hubris has gotten out of control and he wants to go start a fight with everybody in the region, right? So let's play some of these clips that we have now. Let's start domestically.
Hold on. Are you going to get into the neocons and all that? Because I have one clip that especially what you were talking about in the beginning that Trump said at the press conference that I think is pretty important, and I'm curious what your take on this is. Listen to this clip here.
Thank you, sir. You've said you have someone in mind to be the new Iranian leadership, if not the Ayatollah's son. What are you looking for in that person? Are you looking at someone internal, given that you just said that their leadership has been
I like the idea of internal and eternal, come to think of it. But I like the idea of internal because it works well. I mean, I think we've proven that so far in Venezuela. We have a woman, Delcy, who has been, president of the country, very respected, she's doing a great job. And it's, no disruption. We had, as you remember, Iraq, where everybody got fired. The military got fired, the police got fired, the politicians got fired. There was nobody. And you know what they turned into? ISIS. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So I would like to see people that are inside go. Now they talk about the son of the Shah. They talk about other people, but, hasn't been there in many, many years. We have a formula that's been very good so far, and I think it'll continue to be good. The relationship is extraordinary with Venezuela, smart country. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil. It's right now in Houston being taken care of and made so beautiful. And you have to see this at work. They have, it's brought to the refineries. It's being refined in Houston, which is made exactly for that product. And so far, but it's 100 million barrels of oil. And now they have another 100 million barrels coming. And it's like a partnership. We're getting along so well with them. It's great for Venezuela and it's great for the United States.
So yesterday, Ghost, we played the plea of Pahlavi, and we covered the article on Mojtaba Khamenei, and then we played the Pahlavi. And I said, guys, I said, look at this. This is Hakuna Matata in Iranian drab, right? This is somebody that is Western educated. This is somebody that is speaking in English, right? Is speaking in English. He's not talking to the Iranian people when he makes that message. He's talking to the Western leadership. He's talking to the color revolutionists. Or the orchestrators of the color revolutions. He has a Richard Nixon Institute of Peace medal or something that was just recently given to him in 2024, just like because I was on with Zach and I said, I wonder if he's ever been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And I asked the machine, and last year, 2024, he was nominated for the Richard Nixon Medal of Peace or something like that. And I said, okay, there's the token paperweight for him to tout as, the heroic. And then I said, watch what's going to happen when Trump comes out and he's like, you know what, we're going to ride with Mojtaba Khamenei or somebody internal, as he says right there. But I think it's going to be Khamenei. He's going to ride with him, and you're going to see the Maduro Delcy Rodriguez transfer here. And I even said yesterday, I said Trump has the formula that he just witnessed in Venezuela, and he comes out and says the same thing. We've got the formula. Venezuela, you got to have somebody internal. They keep things all running. At the same time, they understand the pressure that's coming now from the United States, from the West. Man, I thought that was one of the most fascinating clips right there. His little laying it out there. And he even says, Pahlavi hasn't been in the country for a long time. What did he say about Hakuna Matata? He's
Nobody
been
respects
MIA
her.
for a long time.
Yeah, nobody respects her. Yeah. So you're referring to the Pahlavi clip where he claims, he says, I humbly
been
accept,
elected
I
or
humbly
chosen.
accept the charge to be the leader of Iran now. Yeah,
I have been
that is-
chosen. He doesn't say elected. He says, I've been chosen.
I've been chosen. Yeah, chosen by who exactly? Yeah. And that would be Netanyahu and his friends. And so Trump's totally rug pulling that. You're spot on there. I'm glad you already played that clip because I had that potentially to play. What was I going to say? Same thing, by the way. Like if you want to share my screen real quick, we have yesterday or a few days ago, Trump formally recognized the Venezuelan government. So like that hasn't, I guess, formally happened yet, but now it has. Trump has formally recognized Venezuela. He's formally said, yeah, this is our like this is our girl. Delcy's our girl. And I've been writing about the Cuba situation. Trump has said that Rubio's in meeting in secret with Raul Castro's grandson, who's like in his 30s. They call him Raulito. And he's probably going to be the next leader of like U.S. backed leader of Cuba. The Castro family is going to remain in power, and the Hispanic wing of the neocon party is flipping out over that because they said that one of their number one demand is the Castro family being thrown out of Cuba. And Trump's now saying that the Castro family is actually going to be our partner in Cuba. So again, you're seeing this template applied everywhere. And I think people need to like change their thinking because we've been conditioned by Fox News for the past 30 years to view the world one way. And again, like just think back in your head, where did I get this worldview from? Did it actually come from like an informed, organic experience, or did it come from like listening to Fox News for 30 years, repeat the same thing, the same lies over and over again? The Iraq comment, Trump keeps saying that. He keeps saying, in Iraq, we threw everybody out, we installed all of our own people, and what happened? They became ISIS. He's telling you like a very, very damning truth there. ISIS is a creation of the U.S. State Department. Al-Qaeda is a creation of the U.S. State Department. They work for us. Yep. Us meaning the U.S. We created ISIS, we created Al-Qaeda, and that's why neither organization has ever attacked Israel, and I encourage all of you to go look that up. That is a fact, that neither Al-Qaeda nor ISIS has ever once attacked Israel. There was one little skirmish they had in November 2016, and ISIS turned around and apologized and said sorry in the Golan Heights. They said, sorry, we didn't realize that was the IDF. And 4 ISIS guys got killed in that shootout. So, and then there's also reports from like 2018, 2019 of Israel taking in Al-Qaeda guys in their hospitals and treating them. And they justified it by saying, yeah, we're going to help. Of course, we're going to help the Al-Qaeda guys. Like, they're our friends. It's like, wait, what? So again, like, all you have to do is just kind of step back and objectively look at this stuff. Take the emotion out of it. Take away like the conditioning, and you can kind of piece together what the truth actually is just based on what people say and how they say it. So here is a 20-second clip from Trump speaking to Dana Bash. I believe this is from Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. It might be Saturday. Listen to what he says here. Oh wait, sorry. Share my screen.
Yeah, after this clip goes, we got to hit a sponsor real quick.
Delcy Rodriguez, and he said she's doing a very good job. I said, well, would you be okay with a religious leader in Iran? And he said the answer is yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be a democratic leader in Iran. It just has to be somebody who treats the U.S. and Israel fairly, as well as people in the Delcy.
Yeah. So again, for those who didn't catch it, Dana Bash relaying that in her interview with Trump told her that, yeah, like I'm cool with like a crazy religious leader being in charge in Iran, as long as we get along with him and he treats us nicely and fairly. This is not about democracy. This is not about like overthrowing the government for the Iranian people. What a deviation this is from a week ago when Trump was like encouraging the Iranian people to step up and overthrow their government. And again, this goes back to what I was saying before. This is narrative chaos. I don't think this is Trump like changing his tune. I think this is Trump preventing the Pavlovis of the world from seizing the narrative and applying their own story to this. And again, like the analysis from all the eggheads who orbit around the State Department is kind of meaningless because their sources in the government can't give them accurate information because Trump is changing the narrative every day.
Amen. We're going to hit a sponsor real quick. I just picked up on something, Ghost. This is maybe the first time ever, I think, that Ghost's hair has gotten more tamed as the show has gone on. Look at this. That's before. And that was the before. This is right now. Congratulations, man. You figured it out.
I was walking my dogs before the show, and it's actually pretty hot here today. Like spring has sprung here, and so a little bit of sweat, man. Sweat is some of the best hair product you can get. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into that sponsor, and then I'll give it back to you there. And where are we at? There we go. All right, guys, I want to tell you something that is not well known, but is incredibly powerful. It's called Ace Manon. It's a compound from aloe vera that's massively supports your body's stem cell production and cell health and immune system function. And that matters because your body replaces about 1% of its cells every day. As we age or have health issues, we produce cells less efficiently. The thing is, almost no aloe products have Ace Manon because it breaks down after harvest, and you can't get enough from eating raw aloe because of aloe's laxative compound. However, Emerald Med created a stabilized Ace Manon supplement with the laxative compound removed. It's called Aloe RX. They made it for pharmacies, and now it's available to the public. I want to explain the value of Aloe RX. Stem cell injections can have an amazing results. However, they cost $10,000 to $40,000 per treatment. Aloe RX is not the same thing as stem cells injections, but it massively supports your body's own stem cell production for less than $100. You could literally give your body this for 16 years at the same price as one stem cell treatment. For people who don't need something extreme like a stem cell injection, but want to help their body significantly, this is arguably the best value on the market. The longer you take it, the more compounding support that you have. If you want to support a company that supports our channel and free speech with ads, check out Emerald Med's Aloe RX. Click the link below to learn more and to get 30% off Aloe RX today. And I don't have it up here, but I bought it. They sent me this, like a note here. They sent me like a long note because they watched the show and they heard me talking about my problems I was having with my rotator cuff. And they gave me, they sent me, I bought the Aloe RX. They sent me a CBD rub and a CBD gummies to try as well. And I've been taking it for like 4 or 5 days. I had a softball game last night and it was better than it has been, but it's still hurting a little bit, but I've only been taking it 5 days. And it's good stuff. The only thing that I wasn't crazy about is it doesn't really tell you how to take it. It just tells you to take a teaspoon. So what I've been doing is, and don't put in anything hot. It does say that, but I've been adding it to water and just mixing up the water. And the first night I mixed it on my food. I took, cause it's like kind of flavorless. It doesn't have like a bad flavor, but anyways, Aloe RX, it's good stuff. I'm impressed so far, and I can't wait to see how it continues to help me out with my minor injuries. All right, no. Ghost, back to you, bro.
Yeah, so let's look at. Well, I guess before I get to the big thing I wanted to talk about, I'll give you a few examples of how Trump's kind of like narrative whiplash, giving everyone narrative whiplash to steal BB's line. So you'll recall a week ago, there was a lot of talk about the Kurds coming in, being the ground force. There was a lot of like public speculation, public reporting, news media, and even politicians saying it was going to be the Kurds. We were going to back the Kurds. The Kurds were going to be, they've been our longtime ally. Reports of the CIA arming the Kurds to attack Iran. They were going to be the ground force to invade Iran. And then President Trump came out and said this.
You're not sharing that screen yet? Okay.
Here it is right here.
We're not looking to the Kurds going in. We're very friendly with the Kurds, as you know, but we don't want to make the war any more complex than it already is. No. You ruled that out? We don't want, I have ruled it out. I don't want the Kurds going in. I don't want to see the Kurds get hurt, get killed. We've had a good relation. They're willing to go in, but we really I've told them I don't want them to go in.
So Trump then coming out and kind of squashing all the narratives that are being put out, putting words in his mouth saying that the Kurds are going to be the force in the ground. And then, of course, the Kurds came out and said, yeah, we actually have no interest in doing this because we don't trust the CIA. Because in the years past, we've been down this road before where we've been armed by the CIA to go overthrow a government, being promised that we would be given our sovereignty, and then it didn't work out for us. So you know what? We actually don't have any interest in doing this either. So Trump and the Kurds are on the same page that, nope, we're not going to do this either. We're not doing this. Because again, I think the strategy here from the neocons is to basically get these different tribes in the Middle East fighting one another to destabilize the region. That's the whole point of like this exercise here from their perspective. So that's another example of Trump doing this narrative whiplash thing. So then we have this story from Sunday, I believe this is. And this is from Axios, Barak Ravid, Trump's favorite Israeli journalist, but also Mark Caputo, who's Bannon's reporter in the White House, co-authoring this story. And it says, Scoop, U.S. dismayed by Israel's Iran fuel strike, sources say. Iran strikes on 30 Iranian fuel depots on Saturday went far beyond what the U.S. expected when Israel notified it in advance, sparking the first significant disagreement between the allies since the war began 8 days ago, according to a U.S. official, Israeli official, and a source with knowledge. The U.S. is concerned Israeli strikes on infrastructure that serves ordinary Iranians could backfire strategically, rallying Iranian societies to support the regime and also driving up oil prices. The Israeli Air Force's Saturday strikes created large fires in Tehran, igniting flames visible for miles and blanketing the capital in heavy smoke. The IDF claimed in a statement that the fuel depots are used by the Iranian regime to supply fuel to different consumers, including its military organs. An Israeli military official said the strikes were intended in part to tell Iran to stop targeting Israeli civilian infrastructure. And then it says, but a U.S. official said that the U.S. military was surprised by how wide-ranging these attacks were. Quote, we don't think it was a good idea, senior U.S. official said. An Israeli official said the U.S. message, this is an Israeli official saying that the U.S. message to them was WTF. That was their response, the White House, when they learned that this happened. And neither side responded to comment for this comment. But this is a Trump advisor told these two reporters, the president doesn't like the attack. He wants to save the oil. He doesn't want it to burn. And it reminds people of higher gas prices. Here is the video, or one of the many videos circulating of what this attack, the fallout from this attack. This is reportedly Tehran. So you kind of have these apocalyptic scenes of like giant fire columns because they basically went and blew up these giant fuel depots. Israel says that these are military fuel depots, but the White House is saying these are actually civilian. These serve like ordinary civilians, and this is actually going to drive the Iranian people away from like supporting a regime change or anything like that. It's also going to drive up the price of oil, which is a big concern for Trump right now. But this is interesting because we actually got some affirmation here, because you could say, well, is Axios just making this whole thing up? Well, here's Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham saying, our allies in Israel have shown amazing capability when it comes to collapsing the murderous regime in Iran. America is most appreciative. However, there will be a day soon that the Iranian people will be in charge of their own fate, not the murderous Ayatollah's regime. In that regard, please be cautious about what targets you select. Our goal is to liberate the Iranian people in a fashion that does not cripple their chance to start a new and better life. When this regime collapses, the oil economy of Iran will be essential to that endeavor. And then here is the forward Jewish media outlet affirming that Lindsey Graham is urging Israel to stop striking Iranian civilian oil depots. So that seems to affirm what these two guys are reporting about the White House. And Bannon also came out and backed Caputo's reporting and said that that is true, that is what the White House's response to all this was. So again, this demonstrates a divide, I think, between Trump and Netanyahu, where Netanyahu has his own agenda. The Israelis have their own agenda of what they want to see happen. And Trump is kind of like stepping off the rug and kind of getting on the, taking the exit ramp to exit the highway And meanwhile, the Israelis are flooring it, picking up speed, heading down the highway. So that brings us now to the most recent developments from Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham is now like apoplectic in his demands. The demand now is that the Arabs pick up the sword and start fighting Iran. He's demanding that Saudi do this. He's demanding that the UAE do this. And both the UAE and Saudi have come out and said, we're not doing that. Like, we're not going to fight. Like, we're not going to fight Iran. That is not our interest. We don't want to start divisions. Turkey said the same thing. Here is Erdogan saying, quote, despite our repeated warnings, provocative steps are continued to be taken against Turkey. No action should be taken that casts a shadow over our 1,000-year-old neighborly and brotherly bond with Iran. We also had Pakistan, who is another very ardent ally of President Trump. This guy, Sharif, who's the prime minister of Pakistan, has like tears in his eyes, talked about how much he loves President Trump and how important President Trump is to creating stability and peace in the Middle East. This guy is like one of the biggest Trump backers there is when it comes to the Middle East and the Muslim Ummah. And here he is coming out and condemning the assassination of the Ayatollah, which again, I don't even think that actually happened. I think that the Ayatollah has been dead for a while, but I could be wrong about that. Just my speculation. But he's saying that Pakistan stands with Iran and will not be attacking them, despite Pakistan and Iran having a bad history there. And there has been a lot of speculation recently that there was going to be a war between Pakistan and Iran that hasn't materialized. So again, you're seeing all these different elements of the security architecture in the Middle East, which in years past would have collapsed under all this pressure and they would have all started fighting one another. It's holding up because I think these forces, these Zionists and these neocons, want to see all these different tribes fight one another, destabilize the region, and basically take everybody into war against Iran, which of course would be World War III. And they're all saying, nope, we're not doing it. We're not interested. We're not going to participate. We're out. And so that development, that response has now triggered this hyperventilating anger from Lindsey Graham. And so now Lindsey Graham is all over the media saying this. Let's pull up the correct tab, this one. Okay, so here's Lindsey Graham to the isolationist, people like me who don't think that we should be going out and starting wars all over the place. Here's what he says.
All the anti-Semites to all the isolationists, I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day. They're the best ally we could hope for. So we have a commander-in-chief in President Trump, who I think is Ronald Reagan plus. All the anti. So that again, that's Lindsey Graham saying he is not with you, the American people. He is with Israel to his dying day. I think those are probably some of the most truthful words that Lindsey Graham has ever spoken into a camera. And so here he is during the same interview with Sean Hannity, attacking. Let me see. There's a better, longer clip I have right here. Attacking Saudi Arabia and the UAE for refusing to participate in this war. God bless you for trying.
Okay, so here's Hannity and Lindsey Graham talking about that.
Right thing. God bless you for trying. God bless you for destroying this regime.
And Spain, Macron, and Great Britain, they either wake up. This is their tipping point moment too. Just like the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, you decide now. UAE, decide now. Qatar, decide now. Because I'm a little sick and tired of the constant threading of needles. They wanted the Iranians stopped as much as the Israelis did.
Absolutely.
Truth be told.
All right. We should move all our stuff to Israel. Thank you.
So hang on. Let me just get this straight. The cuck Fox News host that wears a CIA pin,
yes,
is sitting there saying, hey, Middle East, get off your ass and get involved in this war. We really want World War III. Poking it with the stick. Come on, man, do the thing.
Yeah, and like if you didn't catch the beginning, he wasn't just saying the Middle East. He was saying Britain. He was saying Spain. He was saying Europe. He's like, where is Europe? Why is Europe not fighting Iran? Why is the Middle East not fighting Iran? Get off your ass and pick up a sword and start fighting, right? this is what there's, and then what Lindsey Graham was saying there at the end, we should just move all our stuff to Israel. He was saying we should pull all of our military assets out of Britain, out of Spain, out of Qatar, out of Saudi Arabia, and just move everything to Israel so we can just launch operations indefinitely from Israel. And again, like this is you're seeing the frustration, I think, from the machine, from the deep state, that the Abraham Accords, as it was pitched to them by President Trump, is not working out. Because in my opinion, this is just my analysis, could be wrong, I think President Trump sold the Abraham Accords to the GOP, to the neocons back in the first term as this: we're going to unite all the Arabs together on one team. They've never been united before. They've always been fighting one another. We're going to put them all on the same team, and then we're going to turn them against Iran, and we're going to get the Arabs against Persia. And the neocons were like, that is brilliant. Yes, we support that. But meanwhile, President Trump didn't realize, the neocons didn't realize that President Trump was also working back channels, I think using Qatar into Tehran, and was facilitating this UMA that includes now Turkey, it includes Pakistan, I think it also includes Iran, frankly. And all these people are on the same team. And again, the team is not like the Muslims against everyone else. The team is peace. The team is stability. The team is, because if you don't have stability in the Middle East, I think we can all agree, if you don't have a stability in the Middle East, you don't have world peace. You're always going to have conflict. You're always going to have problems. You're going to have destabilized like global oil markets. So we want a stable Middle East in order to have stability worldwide in the golden age. And remember, these people are our friends, right? Like the Arabs have pledged trillions and trillions of dollars to invest in American infrastructure, to build out our natural gas pipelines here at home, to build out our AI infrastructure here at home, to build out our shipbuilding, to build out our manufacturing base. Like they're investing trillions of dollars into our economy to build us back up. Like these are our friends. These are not our enemies. They're not like radical zealots that that hate us and want to destroy us. They want to build the golden age with us, and we need to appreciate the fact that pushing them into a war that they don't want is a mistake. Now, the last thing I'll show you is this, and I thought this was really interesting. Again, this is like, take this for what it is. I don't know if this is real or not, but people have asked, "Hey, Grok, is this real?" And Grok says, "Yeah, this is a real report from an Argentine news outlet." Oh, and by the way, here is a Lindsey Graham post threatening Saudi Arabia, saying if Saudi Arabia, why are you not picking up the sword? Hopefully this changes soon. If not, consequences will follow. Consequences against the Arabs. Like,
that might be a Logan Act violation right there.
Yeah. And by the way, like, I'm no diplomat. Like, I haven't been trained by the State Department to engage in diplomacy with these countries, but I've studied the Saudis long enough to know that they're very private people. They don't like to handle their business in public. They like to handle their business behind closed doors. So doing this, like if your goal as Lindsey Graham is to get them on your team and to get them to sign on, this is the worst possible way to go about this. Like a public plea, a public proposal where you're basically negotiating public, that is the worst possible way, I think, to engage with the Saudis and try to get them on your team. So I think this is really more of a
Hey, we're losing your connection, bro.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah. You got like really pixelated and kind of robotic with your sound. But you're good now. You're still a little pixelated though. But go ahead.
Weird. Yeah, I was just saying that I think if your goal is to get the Saudis on your team, this is the worst possible way to go about it. I think this is more of a humiliation ritual, I think, from Lindsey Graham toward the Saudis than like an earnest attempt to get them on board. I think he understands they're not getting on board, that they aren't going to join in this fight, and neither are the Qataris, and neither are the Turks, and neither are the Pakistanis. And this is a really, really positive development for the golden age, because the thing I was worried about was seeing the Middle East collapse and just start fighting one another, in which case we don't get a golden age. So the last thing I'll show you is this video from this Argentinian news outlet. So there is a reporter who was on the ground in Israel. And so my question that I posed to Alpha when I was on his show on Sunday is, what does Tel Aviv actually look like right now? Like, what is happening in Tel Aviv? Because we're not getting any like real information from the media. Like Israel is very, very closed off and letting information get out. I've seen clips of them like detaining reporters on the street who are trying to report on like the damage that's occurred from these missile attacks. So here is a Argentinian reporter. He's speaking in Spanish. So I will, here he is right here. So I'll mute him and I'll read what he's saying. So he's in an Israeli bomb shelter in Tel Aviv. His name is, I think, Nelly Castro, I believe is his name. So he says, Nelly Castro from Tel Aviv, reporting the anchors are cutting to him. He says they returned to the shelter because the attacks resumed. And so he says, yes, we are telling you, listen, 2 detonations were heard, 2 bomb blasts in the area where we are. They just fell in the vicinity of the place where we are. 2 bomb blasts, 1 near the airport. We are trying to find out more information. We are once again in the shelter. It has been shocking in a detail that has disturbed us much more. The alarms did not sound. So this has absolutely surprised all of us. We have 2 impressive bomb blasts that have fallen meters from where we were standing. Please tell us how you're receiving us. He says, we are receiving the audio and video transmission very well, but this time you didn't receive an alert then. And he said, yes, we didn't receive an alert. The alarm, he says, Guillermo, I understand you're receiving us well. So I think he's just doing technical with the reporters. He's going to cut to a Israeli military official here. He said, I insist we are broadcasting from the place. 2 blasts went off. The information we have is that these projectiles, these launches are developing over the airport area. 1 just exploded, I would tell you, 100 or 150 meters from where we are. We will try to pinpoint it the moment we are outside, but the surprising element is that the alarms have not sounded. Therefore, this has absolutely surprised everyone. We are all here. We are fine, safe. We are, as you can see, the journalists who are broadcasting to different parts of the world. Here in this place, the surprise incident occurred in the middle of this tense war. Let me see if I can skip ahead to where he said, I insist the element that has drawn the most attention is that the alarms did not sound because before we have gotten alerts. And so then he gets out of the bomb shelter and he cuts to right here, an Israeli official. Says the alarms have not sounded. The alarms did not sound. The alarms have not sounded, and this is disconcerting everyone. We are all shocked. We are all shocked. There's an army officer there. Are you seeing him there? Are you seeing him? There's an officer who is making some statements. Yes, he is saying the same thing. He is saying we are surprised. So there's an army officer there giving an interview to an Israeli outlet, presumably. He says, I hear him. He is saying the same thing to a group of colleagues. He is saying they are surprised because the alarms have not sounded. The people are shocked in the face of this, which is really novel. So the point is like, what's actually happening in Tel Aviv? Because I'm wondering, assuming to whatever extent this war is real, and I, for the sake of the argument, will say that the war is real and that there really is a kinetic conflict happening. There have been reports for the past week that we're running out of interceptors and that they're going to start cannibalizing PACCOM and INDOCOM and pulling like THAAD missile defense systems from Japan and from South Korea in order to reinforce the Iron Dome, which is running out of interceptors. We heard Marco Rubio talk about the production capabilities of Iran and how they're able to produce more missiles and drones than we are interceptors. And so at some point, they're going to run out of the ability to defend themselves from these attacks. And the question remains, going back to the point I was making earlier about the devolution and the Iranian missile commanders just sending missile after missile after missile. Are we going to see Netanyahu have to capitulate and surrender? Like, I wonder if Trump has set this all up where the Israelis come out and they basically cry uncle and they say, okay, we're done. We surrender. Enough is enough. Because if that is, in my opinion, the only way you stop the Greater Israel Project. The only way you stop the Greater Israel Project is forcing Israel to submit, not because of diplomacy or not because of strong arming from a political standpoint with leverage, but because they are actually engaged in an earnest kinetic conflict and they just get overwhelmed and overpowered. So I wonder if that's what's happening. I can't know for certain. But I will be interested to see what rhetoric comes out of Tel Aviv in the next week.
Well, we can go a little bit extra today because I don't think John's doing Daily Herald today, so we don't have to.
Okay.
We don't have to clear the room. But I want to jump into this because, like you said, as this war, whatever you want to call it, swings one way or the other, if it's not in favor of, the quote unquote deep state regime, whatever, the CIA, whatever you want to call it, if it's not in favor of them, they're going to do everything they can to try and swing the tide back into their favor. So, I saw this morning. Iran may be activating sleeper cells outside the country, alert says, and that's outside of Iran, not outside of our country. It says the U.S. has intercepted encrypted communications believed to have originated in Iran that may serve as a, quote, operational trigger for, quote unquote, sleeper assets outside of the country. The alert, reviewed by ABC News, cites, quote, preliminary signal analysis, end quote, of a transmission, quote, likely of Iranian origin, end quote, that was relayed across multiple countries shortly after the death of Khamenei. The intercepted transmission was encoded and appeared to be destined for clandestine recipients who possess the encryption key, the kind of message intended to impart instructions to, quote unquote, covert operatives or sleeper assets without the use of the internet or cellular networks. Saying the alert said, quote, while the exact contents of the transmissions cannot be currently determined, the sudden appearance of a new station with international rebroadcast characteristics warrants heightened situational awareness. So basically, it's a bunch of hearsay, speculation, and propaganda that they're going out there and saying, hey, guys, there might be a false flag, so you better be horrified and terrified and fearmonger the shit out of people to believe that somehow this is going to result in these attacks on our homeland that may or may not be actual sleeper cells as opposed to Gladio type operations, etc.
Yeah. And so let's just step back and look at this from objective analysis, because if you're Iran, a few things. Iran has demonstrated that they have measured, they're measured, right?
Yeah.
We saw them in years past have the opportunity after being struck by Israel to respond and go all out, right? And they didn't do it. They did a measured response. We saw when Trump took out Soleimani in 2020, they called Trump and said, hey, we have to respond. This is according to President Trump. We have to respond to, show strength and honor. So we're just going to fire some missiles into the desert. Not going to kill anybody. This is just performative. And then we saw the same thing happen, during Biden's term with Israel, where they fired a couple hundred missiles. Nobody died. And that was that. And then we saw with the 12-day war, when Trump said it was over, Iran was like, okay, cool, it's over. So they've shown that they have measure and that they have calculation, that they're not just screaming zealots, running in with a suicide vest and ready to go meet their maker. There's calculation here. So from their perspective, what they're doing appears to be working, right? They are firing missiles into Tel Aviv. They're frustrating the hell out of Lindsey Graham. They apparently took out this whole intelligence network that was operating on the ground with a Operation Gladio color revolution thing. They apparently successfully nullified that. And they're winning the narrative right now. I mean, the internet online is turning against Israel and is basically blaming Israel for all of this. And the patience is being lost. Everyone's losing their patience with Israel. They're not losing their patience with Iran. So from Iran's perspective, why would you go? And then Trump is saying that he's looking to end the war now. So from Iran's perspective, why would you go out when the bear is turning around and walking away? Why would you go out and say, hey, come back and fight me some more, right? That doesn't make any sense. And then finally, if you want to share my screen, I'm not going to play this video because it's 2.5 minutes, but here is an Iranian official claiming that, and this is not the first time they've come out and said this. This is the deputy prime minister claiming that the attacks in Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Cyprus were all false flag operations that were conducted by Israel. He also came out and said the same thing a few days ago about the attacks, some of the attacks, not all the attacks, but the attacks on the Saudi Aramco oil refinery last week. He said, those weren't us. We did attack other targets in Saudi Arabia, but we didn't attack Saudi Aramco. He said that was a false flag by Israel. So again, it's fog of war. So you kind of have to take everything with just a grain of salt. We don't take anything as gospel, but it is possible that we are seeing false flag attacks being conducted either by Israel or maybe the CIA or maybe MI6 for the purpose of ginning up support for a continued war or trying to provoke responses from these other Muslim countries to get them to attack Iran. It seems like all these Muslim countries, though, are wise enough to understand that they are being baited into something that they don't want to do. Like Erdogan said it, the Saudis said it, the Pakistanis said it. They said, we're not going to attack Iran. So again, like we saw this happen in the wake of October 7th, when October 7th happened, and then the IDF went in guns blazing to Gaza. The Muslims didn't do anything. They didn't pick up the sword and go screaming into Israel and attack them. They sat back and they kind of let it all play out. And now they're doing that again. And the big loser in all of this, from a narrative perspective, is Israel. They're the ones who are losing public support, not Iran. If anything, there's public sympathy towards Iran because they're viewed as kind of the victim of these unprovoked attacks. So again, like, doesn't matter how you feel about Iran. Like, you can hate Iran, you can love Iran. Like, I certainly don't have like a love for the country. I don't know anything about the country because I haven't been there. I don't live there. I don't know like what their actual government is like. I only know what Fox News has said about their government for the past 30 years, which may or may not be true. But the public sentiment online is turning against Israel and is sympathetic now towards Iran, which is viewed somewhat as a victim here. And Trump is now stepping off of this rug while the neocons are doubling and tripling down and demanding that everybody go to war with Iran and start World War III. And I think we're going to see a divergence here between Trump and these neocons who have really been exposed for what they are, which are just traitors to the American people. I mean, Lindsey Graham is probably going to start calling for boots on the ground and like American soldiers to be in Iran.
Well, yeah, originally he said no, but kind of reneged on that a little bit there. One thing that you brought up there when you were talking about Iran allegedly attacking the Arab nations, one of the things that, you know, when I woke up last Saturday and saw that this had happened and I'm going through my news feed and everything, one of the things that I saw over and over that I was like, what the fuck was the attacks on the Saudis, on the Qataris, on, you know, some of these other, the UAE. And I started thinking about it and I was like, okay, were these missiles that were flying overhead? Because you remember when Jordan was like, we're going to not Jordan. Was it Jordan that was like, we're going to shoot down the missiles when in the 12-day war? Who was it that came out and they're like, we're going to shoot down missiles that are headed towards Israel?
Yeah, I think it was Jordan. Yeah, it probably was Jordan.
Yeah, so Jordan was like, we're going to take these out. So I'm wondering if any of that was fallout from that. But the other thing that President Trump came out almost immediately following the operations conducting was Trump came out and said, well, you know those Iranian drones that you're seeing? Well, we have the same exact ones. We have identical ones. We made replicas of their drones. And so, you know, it's kind of like laying that out there like, hey, some of these drones might not be Iranian. They could be rogue American actors. They could be Israeli actors. Because if we've got them, Israel's got them. You know, it could be other nations that are doing this. That was interesting to me. Go ahead.
Well, he said the same thing about the Tomahawk missiles with
that's what I was gonna play that in just a second. But yeah, I did want to land the CIA thing. I want to land that right here. This was after the 12-day war. Now we were talking about, you know, the false flags, the sleeper cells and all that stuff. Ghost, in your opinion, militarily, if we're to believe the narrative that we've been pushed down, that's been shoved down our throats for 47 years, that Iran's only weeks away from a nuclear missile because of their nuclear program, what would you say is Iran's most valuable military asset, if that's all true?
I mean, at this point, it sounds like it's their hypersonic missiles and their drones, right?
Well, their nuclear program as a whole would be the hypersonic missiles would be the delivery system.
Yeah. The nuclear program combined with the hypersonic missiles, yeah.
So as President Trump goes out there with the B-2s, Operation Midnight Hammer, and destroys their nuclear program, this is what the mainstream media, the Mockingbird media, was trying to fearmonger us with.
Just in, that Iran directly threatened America? Tom, tonight, NBC News has learned that message from Iran was conveyed to President Trump by an intermediary during last week's G7 summit, warning the president if he launched airstrikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran could respond by unleashing terrorist attacks on the U.S. by activating sleeper cells it has inside this country, according to U.S. officials, all as we learn new details about those historic strikes.
I mean, if that's not the most, like, loaded statement you could ever. They could do this, according to two U.S. officials. It might happen if you strike. Just a bunch of rhetorical or propaganda bullshit right there.
Yeah. And again, like Iran's already come out and said they're not attacking the Arab states anymore. Like they're not doing any more strikes on their neighbors. They were attacking like what they considered legitimate U.S. Israeli targets in those countries, and they're done doing that. If they're unwilling to attack their own neighbors because they understand that it would ultimately turn the sentiment against them, why would they turn around and attack U.S. soil, which would then build public support, U.S. support for a prolonged war against Iran? Like, again, the calculation there just doesn't add up. Doesn't mean that, a foreign country wouldn't be willing to do that, but they're winning the narrative war in a lot of respects in terms of like the public sentiment being against Israel and not Iran. So why would they sacrifice that just to get a few cheap strikes on U.S. soil?
Yeah. And then here's the last part that I want to, well, actually I have one quick thing I want to point to real quick after this, but this was, so the clip I played where he's talking about, internal versus eternal. We want to keep the regime. Well, we want to keep the leadership internal. This was the very next question. First and foremost, the guy that asked it is totally unhinged, but listen to this question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. President, you just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation, but Tomahawks are used by others, as you know. Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
So there's a lot to unpack there. And like, I've never seen there's such a stringent, like I don't know the word here, but there's a widespread desire to somehow analyze this one photo of a blurry pixelated missile that we don't know what the fuck it's hitting, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to tell from that photo what it's actually hitting, but we're to believe that somehow people are able to take that pixelated, blurry, compressed image and make with 100% certainty that it's a Tomahawk missile and not a, I think it's called a KH-55, which is the Iranian equivalent. Totally. And then this guy goes out there and, your Secretary of Defense won't say it while he's standing over your shoulder. Have you ever been in a military chain of command? Clearly you haven't. If you're asking a question like that, you would never, ever, with the boss man right there, you would defer to him. You would not answer a question like that without deferring to him. He is the chief, the commander in chief. You would defer that question and say, well, that's not my place to answer it. I'll defer to the commander in chief. Go ahead. I'll let you take that from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that was a fascinating exchange where the guy says, why are you the only one saying this? And I think that kind of just goes to what I was saying before, where Trump is coming out there, whether it's Iran or it's Cuba or it's Venezuela, he comes out and he changes the narrative every day. He just comes out and he says, and again, I think what he's doing is the narrative whiplash prevents the deep state from sinking their teeth in and kind of like taking control of the story and then telling their own version of the story that benefits them and their agenda. I think that's a big part of what Trump does. Now, as it relates to this specific narrative, the specific storyline with this school of girls being hit by this missile, I've seen plenty of analysis on this, and there's a possibility that it was a U.S. missile, and if that's the case, then it was probably a mistake. And this school would have been in a Navy base. It would have been the daughters of like IRGC officers, right? Like sending their kids to school. And there's the possibility that the missile hit the school as part of an attack where outdated intel failed to assess that this was like a school for a school for girls. So all that's possible. Trump even said, he said, whatever the report says, like, I'll accept. Like, I'm not trying to get out in front of anything. Whatever the report says, we'll accept. Let's see what the report says. He also says, even if it was a Tomahawk missile, we're not the only ones who have Tomahawks. It could have been anyone who fired that missile, right? I think all of those are interesting facts. The thing that I was mentioning to you before we went live, that I was kind of thinking about this morning is nobody's talking about the fact that, like, wait, we're talking about the IRGC officers sending their girls to school. Like, the story that I've been told for the past 20 years is that girls aren't allowed to go to school in Iran. Isn't that part of the reason that Randy Fine says that we need to go like nuke Iran, is because they won't let girls go to school. And so because of that, their culture is inadequate and we need to like overthrow their government because girls aren't allowed to go to school. And then here we have reports that everybody seems to be in agreement on, that this was a school for girls that were the daughters of the IRGC leaders, like the IRGC being the most religious, like radicalized religious leaders in the country. And they're sending their daughters to school. So have we been lied to this entire time that girls are actually allowed to go to school in Iran? Is that like what do I have wrong here? Because I was told my entire life that girls are not allowed to go to school in Iran. And here we have an attack on a girls' school. We don't know who did the attack, but the consensus is that a building full of schoolgirls was attacked. And not only are they schoolgirls, but they're the daughters of the most radicalized religious leaders in the country. So what am I missing here? Like, we've been lied to, obviously. What else are they lying to us about?
Yep. All right. And then the last thing, maybe we should just cover this just real quick. So when this first happened, immediately I said that I thought that Israel acted unilaterally, jumped the gun, Leroy Jenkins, this shit a little bit, went in prematurely. And Rubio confirmed that. And then Trump came out and said, no. If anything, we forced Israel's hand, which I thought was fascinating. There's no way in my mind, knowing what we know about Donald J. Trump, there's no way that he would have done this while we had active negotiations going on with Kushner, his son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, one of his longest friends, going all the way back to college, where they're still business partners and buddies and everything else. There's no way that Trump would say, hey, we're giving you 10 to 15 days. Negotiations are actively ongoing. There's another meeting on Monday, but I'm going to bomb you on Saturday. There is no way that, in my opinion, that President Trump did that on his own. Like, that was Leroy Jenkins running into the pit and him saying, shit, we got to go in too. That's my opinion. Now, go ahead. I'll let you respond to that.
No. Finish your point, please.
Well, now you see this article. Trump tells Times of Israel it'll be a mutual decision with Netanyahu regarding when the Iran war ends. And to me, that's, Trump is saying, well, me and Netanyahu are going to get together and decide when we're going to end this war, which I guess Iran doesn't have a say in that, first and foremost. But second of all, this could go two ways. Trump could say, well, enough is enough. This war's over. We're done. Or Netanyahu could be saying, hey, we want to end this war. And Trump says, no, we're not done yet. We got more, the Adam Driver, more Kylo Ren, more. There's a lot of different things when you have a mutual decision like that if Netanyahu did jump the gun early and Leroy Jenkins is shit, this could be Trump's way of saying, all right, you fucked around. Now you're about to find out, and we're going to let this play out until we see fit. I don't know, man. I thought that was very interesting.
No, I think I actually agree with your analysis. I think that is potentially what we're seeing here. And a lot of this rhetoric that Trump's been posting on True Social, where he talks about Iran, and I've said this for years, that 10 years ago or whatever, 8 years ago, when he was in the first trip he made to Jerusalem, where he met with Netanyahu, I have it pinned to the top of my X account. I say in the caption, I'm like, is he talking about Iran or is he talking about Israel? He's sitting there speaking to Netanyahu, and him and Netanyahu are having this very tense moment where he's like, I will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And he's sitting there staring at Netanyahu. Netanyahu gets like really uncomfortable. And I'm like, is he talking about Iran or is he talking about Israel? He put out a post the other day where he said, Iran is now disgraced. They had to apologize to all their like neighbors in the Middle East, humiliated. Wasn't really widely reported, but Israel actually had to apologize to the Middle East because they put out reports that the UAE and Saudi had attacked Iran and had joined in on the fight. And then the UAE and Saudi Arabia put out messaging saying, whoa, that's BS. We didn't attack anybody. Like all we're doing is just shooting down missiles that are coming into our airspace. We're not attacking anybody. There's no counterattack. We are not participating in this. And Israel had to come out and say, and they said the Israelis are lying about this. And the Israelis had to come out and say, yeah, we're sorry. We did lie about that. Like they're not actually attacking. So again, like, is Trump talking about Iran when he puts out this stuff? When he says unconditional surrender, I'll play this last clip, and this is the last thing I'll play. Somebody just sent this to me because last week I was talking about who's going to cry uncle first. Here's Trump defining what unconditional surrender means when he means ending this conflict.
What unconditional surrender looks like to you? I mean, what do you want from Iran?
I said unconditional, not conditional. I said unconditional. It's where they cry uncle or when they can't fight any longer and there's nobody around to cry uncle. That could happen too, because we've wiped out their leadership numerous times already. So it's if they surrender or if there is nobody around to surrender, but they're rendered useless in terms of military.
What?
Yeah. So again, like going back to the devolution thing, the fallout from the 12-day war last year is that Iran made steps to prepare for this, where they were going to be able to sustain a war effort in the face of being decapitated from a leadership standpoint. And they're going to continue to be able to fight, it sounds like, indefinitely, at least for the time being. So again, when Trump says that, I just wonder, is he actually throwing that at Iran or is he throwing that at Netanyahu, unconditional surrender? Because again, if we don't see unconditional surrender from Netanyahu, where does the warmongering stop? They just started a war with Lebanon. They're now fighting in southern Lebanon right now. So there's a war now happening in Lebanon. There's a war now happening with Iran. There's, I guess, a war maybe happening in Gaza. I mean, we haven't really gotten an update on that lately. Where does it stop? Where does the war stop? And it only stops, I think, when the side that is starting all of these wars, that is involved in all these wars, surrenders and says, all right, we're done. But I think we only get to that point when they actually feel like they've been defeated. And I think the only way you get to that is with, like you said, throwing them in the deep end of the pool and letting them sink or swim. Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, this show does stop here because I did find out there is going to be a Daily Herald. It's going to be hosted by Ash, I believe. So that will be coming up at 1 p.m. So stay tuned for that. Smash that thumbs up if you have not done so yet. 3,500 people watching, 1.07 thumbs up, 107 thumbs up. There you go. Let's jump in. We do have a few rants here. Scroll in there. Holden over Soul. USA 1 says other presidents' policies and laws hurt the people, so the puppets let them through. Trump tries to help us, and Congress shuts down. Fuck these POSs. Replace everyone in D.C. Burn it all down. America only. Amen. Although America first and foremost. We can't go America only. Isolationism to the most extreme won't work, but I know what you're saying, and I agree with that 100%.
Yep.
Emerald Dragon 1333. 14th Amendment goes hand in hand with the SAVE Act. Need clear definitions first.
Yeah. I mean, we like the SAVE Act. One of the big things it's doing is just exposing the fact that the Republican Party is not at all interested in free and fair elections. I think that's what's really being exposed here.
The beneficiaries. AKA Lou 9. Do you guys realize how much comfort you two provide with your calm analysis? Gordon with the Middle East and Brian with your perspective of war. Thank you. You are welcome, AK Lou. Also, I got a little heated today talking about the retards in our Congress.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I don't have any answers. I don't have any sources or I don't know. Okay. I'm literally just analyzing what I'm seeing, the same stuff that y'all are seeing. So and I could be wrong. I was wrong, by the way, about a war starting between the U.S. and Iran. Like, I'll be the first to tell you that. I did not see this coming. However, I'm very encouraged by the developments we're seeing 1 week in, where Trump is basically doing the Venezuela model all over again, stepping off the rug and saying, yeah, we're not doing regime change, actually. That is very, very encouraging to me and speaks to a psyop. And the question is, who's a psyop targeting? Because it's obviously not Iran.
Yeah. The crazy thing is if you even say like, boots on the ground to me is a line in the sand, like people melt down. It's like, you're blackpilling. Okay, well, put on your boots and go over there. I've done it. I've done my time. You put on yours and get over there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the consensus in MAGA has always been no more boots on the ground anywhere for any reason.
But there's a lot of FAGA that completely rolled on that, and they're like, well, I got to trust the plan. Okay.
Yeah, the only time boots should be on the ground in the war is if we're invaded. That's really it. I don't. And then if you need to do surgical strikes for whatever reason, okay, fine. But boots on the ground meaning like mass deployment,
right?
I don't see a reason for that. Ever, because that's a forever war where we're going to fight a war in a foreign land. Let's focus on America and fixing America.
Yep. Reberhart 29 last minute rant. Thank you so much. This awesome show today. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, guys, stay tuned. Daily Herald coming up here with Ash in about 34 minutes. 17 times 2 Keck for all the Trust the Planners out there. Gordon, thanks for joining me as always, brother. You've got Geo with Ghost today, right?
Yeah, 2:00. So we'll go deeper into this. We'll talk about the Shield of the Americas stuff, which has been really glossed over. I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing with Trump's plan with South America. I'm kind of starting to see it and see the big picture. And so we'll look at that from a nerd geography perspective.
All right. And then we got Badlands Book Club tonight at 6 p.m. talking about stolen elections in Venezuela. And so I'm sure we will unpack a lot of the Runbeck stuff, as well as, Colonel Towner joining us on that show. So fantastic insight from a CIA perspective. And I'm sure we'll probably go off a little bit. So tune into that 6 p.m. tonight. We'll see you guys later.
Legend says, on St. Patrick's Day, a beard without oil is just a chin with ambition. But a beard with soft disclosure beard oil, that's true treasure. Spiced vanilla, naked, smooth as a leprechaun's getaway plan. Soft enough to impress your barber, bold enough to confuse a baby goat. And this boar bristle brush tames your beard like it holds the crown coin. Every bottle is American made, which means when you buy Soft Disclosure, you're supporting 6 American small businesses. That's not luck, that's capitalism with cheekbones. And while you're at it, try our mint green deodorant, because even legends need fresh pits. Soft Disclosure, go for gold. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code TINYBRIGHT for 15% off.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. Promo code does not apply to bundle discounts.